All right, good morning. If I can invite people to take their seats, please. And I'll open the meeting. Whakatakite hau ki te uru. Whakatakite hau ki te tonga. Kia makina kina ki uta. Kia mataratara ki tai. E hiake ana te atakura. He tio. He huka. He hohu. Tihe moriora. Good morning and welcome to our Finance and Performance Committee meeting. I'll start with apologies, and I've got an apology from Catherine Chu for an early departure. Are there any other apologies that need to be recorded? Okay, so I'm happy to move the apology. Do I have a seconder? Jake McClellan. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Now, declarations of interest. We're just noting that the Mayor, myself and Councillors Gough and Templeton are directors on the board of Christchurch City Holdings Limited. So that's relevant to receiving the annual report, and Councillor Sam MacDonald as Deputy Chair will be in the chair of this meeting for that item. And similarly, that Mike Davidson and myself are directors on the board of Christchurch NZ, and Sam will chair that item as well. So now moving to the confirmation of previous minutes. I'm happy to move those minutes. Do I have a seconder? Sam will second. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Public forum. There are no public forum presentations this morning. Item 5, there are no deputations. And item 6, there are no petitions this morning. So then we move to item 15, Christchurch NZ. And Sam MacDonald will take the chair for that item.
Great, come on up, team, if you want. And as I understand it, you can, if you want to, you can take your masks off while you're presenting as well. So hopefully we've got a presentation. Oh, yep, we have. Cool. So do you want to just run through it, and then if there are questions, we can go through that as well.
Well, thank you for having us here this morning. Just want to acknowledge the great results in a challenging year for Christchurch NZ, and I'm really proud of the whole CNZ team who have stepped up and delivered through these times. Joanna Norris finishes as Chief Executive tomorrow of Christchurch NZ. So this is the last time she'll be in front of you, in this role at least. And I want to acknowledge our real gratitude and warm thanks for everything that she's contributed, not just to Christchurch NZ, but to the city. She has been an extraordinary leader. She has focused on what's best for the city, and she has really inspired us all to ignite bold ambition for Ōtautahi. The search for her replacement is underway and is going well. In the interim, Laura Dawson will be the acting CE. Paul Bingham will be sitting as executive director. Paul is also a director on the board of CNZ. And our talented and expert senior management team, senior leadership team, altogether, I feel really confident that we will have strong leadership throughout the interim period until we have the next exceptional and talented chief executive leading Christchurch NZ. So I'm going to turn it over to Joanna to speak to the presentation.
Thank you, Therese. Linda, did you have anything you want to say before I go? No. Cool. Thank you. Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today about the performance of Christchurch NZ over the past 12 months. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge that you're dealing with a number of other significant issues today, and we will keep this presentation brief to enable you to deal with the matters at hand. And I also want to acknowledge the work that you've done, spirited mahi, in relation to the Three Waters reform, which has taken, I know, a great deal of work and thought leadership from this council. And I want to acknowledge what you will have to navigate later today. It's distressing to hear, of course, that someone has travelled with COVID from Auckland to Christchurch and has moved around our community. And I know that that creates a great burden for the local authority and also for our health counterparts. So just whipping quickly through what we need to talk to you about today, which is the annual report for Christchurch NZ Holdings Limited for the period ending June 30. I'll just note, you all fully understand what we do on behalf of the City of Christchurch, but I do want to continue to draw attention to our mission of igniting bold ambition for Ōtautahi Christchurch, and that sets the context within which we work. And also over on the right-hand side of your screen, our strong commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and the role that we play specifically within delivering to those goals is number 8, number 9, and number 17, which speaks to partnership. As Therese said, it's been a challenging year for the City of Christchurch from an economic standpoint, and also for New Zealand as a whole as a consequence of COVID. To enable us to really understand what was happening within the economy during this COVID period, we developed an index which sought to capture in a timely way trends within the economy, so we could very quickly tell what was happening. That index is on the screen in front of you. I won't speak to it directly because we do report in granular detail on this index, but it's really there to demonstrate just how challenging this year has been from an economic context, both for New Zealand and for Christchurch and for Canterbury. The Christchurch economy has performed well with real resilience through this period, but there are points within our economy of genuine hardship and many, many businesses who are doing it tough through this period. It's our role, both as a local authority and your economic development agency at Christchurch NZ, to support those businesses through that period to ensure that we support the livelihoods and prosperity of the people who live within the households. So we've had a lot that's gone well within that context. You can see some top line figures up there. We secured far more revenue than we had anticipated in budget, with $5.4 million from non-council sources. Now that supplements the income that we receive from you on behalf of the ratepayer, and around a third of our income now comes from sources that are outside of council. So that's really amplifying the impact that we can achieve. We supported more than 1,700 businesses directly. We incubated 45 businesses, and I'm really proud of the work that we did with MSD to move people from unemployment into employment and start-up businesses through the COVID period. We've also had great success within the screen sector this year, with more than 125 film inquiries supported. And despite the enormous challenges of COVID, we supported more than 13 major events. And we formed some significant partnerships with Mana Whenua. From a financial perspective, the numbers are in front of you on the screen there. They're also in the report, so we'll take these largely as read. But again, note the significant increase in revenue that we received from non-council sources and a better than expected budget position as a consequence. Now, we are operating within a deficit position, and that is that addresses directly the direction that you gave us to start to utilise our cash reserves, and you can see there that we utilised our cash reserves to achieve an above budget result there. Moving very quickly through some of the highlights. We formed a really powerful innovation ecosystem in the last 12 months, bringing together incubators across the city and utilising a wide range of partners to start to incubate some really exciting businesses within our community. That's already led to a capital injection of $17.6 million into the businesses that we're incubating. A lot of our innovation work was actually recognised this year with an award from the Economic Development New Zealand, who recognised our integration planning work in response to COVID, and that was a consequence of us working in partnership with others. With respect to our skills and our communities, we paid great attention this year to the impacts of COVID on some of our disadvantaged communities and communities that are vulnerable to the impacts of COVID. That led to a powerful partnership that we have formed with Ngāi Tua Huriri. I just acknowledge the macrons are left off that. Should have some macrons there. And a partnership with Whitiora, which is a hapu-led skills pathway program, which pathways young people and whānau into skills and employment, into jobs and employment. We also formed a partnership with UC and Ngaitahu called the Hōpara Pupil Pathways, which takes people in low decile skills and helps them see a future within our mega industry clusters, including aerospace and health technology. And we ran a really exciting campaign to tell the rest of the world just how great it is to work here in Ōtautahi Christchurch, Christchurch's hiring campaign, and who wouldn't want to be one of those 4 people up that you can see up there on your screen. We hosted our first major feature film here in Christchurch because of the work that we've been doing with the screen sector, and that is, I want to acknowledge, supported by the Christchurch City Council in a number of ways, both through funding but also your facilitation support. And we pulled off the enormous feat with Waka Kotahi of closing the motorway for a feature film. We also filmed at the hospital and at the casino, and all of those were logistical nightmares, but ended up amazing. And I've mentioned the 1,700 businesses that we supported. We took on urban development in the past 12 months. That meant that I had to Google a whole lot of terms that I didn't understand before. But it was a really amazing experience to take on urban development in a seamless way. I'm really proud of the work the team have done, and we're now directly developing 4 sites in partnership with the private sector, and we have many, many more in the pipeline, and I think we're just getting started on something really exciting there. We remain committed to economic leadership. It's really important that we produce insights that are usable by our local community, as distinct from the work that is done at a national level. So this year we prepared the Ōtautahi Christchurch Recovery Plan, a really important piece of work that brought together stakeholders from across the city to make sure that we're working in a concerted effort together. We also reviewed the Antarctic strategy, the major events strategy, and a major piece of work on our skills workforce that we produced for the Regional Skills Leadership Group. We've done a lot of work in destination development. We somehow managed to pull off the world's largest tourism event in 2020. I have to say it was a pretty low bar in 2020, 750 people, tourism people in one room. But it was an incredible event, really did celebrate the best of Ōtautahi Christchurch, and we brought together tourism people from across the country, and we even managed to squeak some in from Australia. And we've begun destination management planning work with our counterparts in Selwyn and Waimakariri and Ngaitahu, including Banks Peninsula, that will lead to destination management plans in the next 12 months. Again, we somehow managed to squeak in 13 major events despite the ongoing COVID restrictions throughout the period. And we bid and won for Sail GP. And I like to joke about this one. We've been bidding for events without the necessary infrastructure, so we looked around at what we did have and we realised we had a harbour. So somehow we managed to pull off Sail GP. Unfortunately, season 2 was cancelled as a consequence of COVID, but we are in active negotiations with Sail GP and the New Zealand government currently to retain season 3. We also won 10 business events with an estimated visitor spend of $2 million. I'm going to take the next slides as read, but I want to just point out that there's no point doing all of this work if we don't speak to the world about it. So we do invest into marketing the city and promoting the city with a cohesive city positioning, which really reinforces that Ōtautahi Christchurch is a tremendous place to work, live, do business and invest. It's a place where you can explore opportunity that's open to new people, new ideas and new ways of doing things. And we're very proud of the way that we're able to market Christchurch to the world. So that brings me to the end. I just wanted to, from a personal point of view, thank every single one of you, all of the elected members who are here. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you over the last 4 years, 1,002 working days.
But she's not counting.
Counting every one of them. And also with the staff that support you. You have a truly exceptional leadership team, executive leadership team here, and I want to acknowledge Dawn Baxendale and the very close working relationship we have and the friendship that we have built over the time that you've been here, Dawn. I also want to acknowledge all of you. You've all become great friends. I love all of you in different ways, your different political persuasions, your different eccentricities, but collectively, what a powerful and amazing group. I'm extremely proud of the work that I have done with you and for you, and I want to also acknowledge that my team is a phenomenal team. No longer my team, but they are a really amazing group of talented individuals who work on behalf of this city. We are a small agency with bold ambition for the city, but we know that we never work alone. We have built a network of trust. We've created a powerful strategic platform on your behalf, which is rooted in global best practice for sustainable economic development. Sustainable Development Goal 17 requires us all to work in partnership to achieve the outcomes set by the Sustainable Development Goals, and we are wholly committed to that as an agency, and we action it every day. You are part of our network of trust, and the partnership between you, elected members, your outstanding executive team, our board, our leadership team, every single wonderful member of our staff, Ngāi Tahu, Ngāi Tuaharere, Ngāti Wheki, Taumutu, Onuku, Wastewater, have I missed one? I don't think so. And all of the entities that we work in partnership with are incredibly important to us. The thousands of businesses we work with nationally and locally, our tertiaries, the mighty Crusaders, and our central government partners. I'm just going to call the Crusaders out again, they're amazing. And all of the people and entities that have worked with us, you have created Christchurch NZ, and it is here to serve you. We are literally nothing without you. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Thank you.
It's going to be hard to replace.
Definitely. Look, thank you very much, Joe, for that. And we will have a presentation shortly. We'll do this first. I just had one question. Did you say 1,020 working days, was it? Or 1,002?
1,002.
But I know I've texted you over weekends and you've come straight back to me, so have you included them as well?
You're right. I should have counted all of the weekends.
Yeah. No, fantastic. Does anyone have any questions? If not, we'll go to the resolutions. Tim? Yep.
There's always one. Hey, on your slide 10, with regards to the Milton Street depot development, excuse me, the team's done an amazing job, and it's a great opportunity in the area. There's no question about that. But the jewel in the crown is the Sydenham Park, which is on the north side. And is there any way, shape or form that we can look at that line of older social houses that is the barrier between, and it is a bit, let's be honest, between what could be an amazing new development for families linking into the park. So I'm just wondering, is there any way that we can look at that and so absorb that and really open that to the north and the park?
This is a really good question. Our team are looking at the whole of the precinct, and I think your question speaks to the opportunity that having an urban development function within an economic development agency really delivers, and that we can look at all of area, and that we can work with council to acquire further land if we need to support wider impact within each of these developments. With respect to that land in particular, I think you're talking about the Pocket Park.
There's
the little
7 dwellings which are social, and
the Ōtautahi housing owned ones. So we are in active discussions with partners, including OCHT, in relation to that wider precinct.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, so we'll go to the resolutions. Can we get them up on the screen? So Jimmy's going to be our proxy at the meeting. And who would like to be the alternate? Tim, would you be able to be the alternate? Yep. So can we add that in? Sarah's happy to move it. Yanni's happy to second it. Do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question of council staff in terms of appointing Councillor Chen as our proxy in terms of voting at the AGM. If we wish to record our vote against the increase in directors' fees, what's the best way to signal that?
So, Linda, have you got an answer for that?
The fees are set by CCHL, and they have delegated responsibility to do that. So it's not an agenda item other than noting the remuneration.
Cool. Okay, that answers it. Thank you, Linda. Well, you've just had the answer, Yanni. It can't be much clearer than that. So, is there any other questions? Yeah. No. Okay. So we've got Sarah's going to move it. Leanne will second it. All in favour? Against? It's already moved. So thank you for that. What we'll do now, given it's a special occasion, Yanni, and we'll try and be polite, I'll invite the Mayor to make a presentation.
Okay. I'm not the only one who's going to stand up and speak, but very briefly, because, I'm going to invite Deputy Mayor Andrew Turner and Councillor Mike Davidson, because they are both members of the board and sit around the council table, and so I thought they would like to have an opportunity to personally reflect on what has been an amazing ride, really, 4 years, and 1,002 days. That sort of rung true as wow, so much and actually such a little amount of time. When I heard that you were willing to take up the role, having come from the role as editor of the press, I was amazed, because I thought this was such an incredible opportunity for the city to have somebody of your talent and experience, and actually coming from a different background to develop that integration across. It was actually 3 or 4 different agencies that were really coming together to form a single whole under this theme of igniting bold ambition for Aotearoa Christchurch, which I've always loved that phrase. And I think that that the skills that you brought to that role and bringing people together, it meant that you had to step outside your comfort zone because of the background that you'd come from. So leaving that and now knowing that you're going back to that field of sort of journalism at its best, then I'm really thrilled that that's the next step on your journey. I did want to comment on how significant it was to bring together the Economic Development Agency, the Regional Tourism Organisation, conferences and events promoter, and then to add Screen Canterbury, and then to add the Antarctic office. The Antarctic office was an ambition of mine very early on in the role, and I know that you got to go to Antarctica as well. And they didn't tell me before I ran for mayor either, but it was a dream come true. But what we discovered through my office was that the council had previously passed a resolution to establish an Antarctic office and simply hadn't done that. And that probably was a lot to do with the earthquakes and things that happened in between. But the establishment of the Antarctic office has been enabled us to kind of lift the framing of the city as one of 5 international gateway cities in the world to a place where it hadn't been for quite some time. So I'm really personally very grateful for that as well. You've hosted a number of organisations within your office space. I think the Central City Business Association has found a home there, which is such a core critical partnership and relationship that I'm thrilled that has happened. And the Christchurch Foundation, and I know that the sharing of ideas that happens in a co-located space actually does improve what one can offer to the other and what together they can offer the rest of the city. So that's been really exciting as well. I'm really looking forward to the urban development role. I'm quite excited about what that potential could bring to the city. And I think just the one that I want to finish on is that you can be so proud of the innovation ecosystem. I have attended so many of the different awards, presentations, the ideas and ability that sit within our city and the those areas that you call super nodes. That, I wasn't going to mention it, but they are the way of the future. They represent the strengths of our the strengths of our region. So they build on the strengths that are already there, but they offer a pathway to the future in every respect. So I think that our city, its place in our region and its place in New Zealand is assured because of the work that you have so importantly contributed to. So thank you very much. Andrew.
Joanna, thanks very much indeed for the work that you've done for Christchurch NZ and for the whole city, in fact, beyond the city and into the region as well. You've made a huge contribution, and we know that that's also involved a huge amount of personal sacrifice, as these roles often do. You became the brand new chief executive of a brand new organisation which was just been stood up at the time. That was a brave move in itself. And as Leanne said, you know, that new organisation was just been stood up and was formed of a number of different organisations and parts of organisations. The Canterbury Development Corporation, that was our EDA at the time, Christchurch and Canterbury Tourism as our RTO, the City Council Major Events Team, our international education functions, and of course each of those had a different history, in some cases quite different aspirations and quite different cultures as well. And as if that wasn't enough, then we added the Antarctic Office, the Greater Christchurch 2050 work, Screen Canterbury, and most recently now the Urban Development function. So, you know, a huge range of different functions with different cultures. But what you've created out of that really eclectic mix is a lean, effective, modern, and well-respected organisation. And an organisation that's a really important and really effective part of our wider council family. But you've done that in a way that's confident, that's ambitious, that's effective, that's inclusive, that's built relationships, and that's commanded a really high level of respect from stakeholders and partners right across the city. So for 1,002 working days, I think it's fair to say that you have been the personification of igniting bold ambition. And all of that has been done, of course, in difficult and trying times. The beginning stage, very much still in earthquake recovery and all of those difficulties. And then fires, floods, terror attacks, and now COVID. So we're so sad to see you go, actually. When I got the news that you were leaving, there was personal disappointment, personal sadness, and I know that's shared around the room today. But, you know, a change of CE is always a time of change and time of transition. But the culture of the organisation as you leave it is well established. The relationships are well formed. Partnerships are strong. And the focus now of the not so new organisation is positive, and the organisation's in a really good space. But you've built the foundations, and whatever happens next, the foundations will always be the foundations, and that'll always be the legacy that you leave, and it'll be the legacy that you've created. And then just on a personal note, I've always enjoyed working with you at the board table, at functions around the city, standing side by side at events and so on. Particularly fond memories from the time that we spent in Seoul when we went up there as guests of Air New Zealand on their inaugural flight that only a couple of months later was cancelled due to COVID. Yeah. But, you know, we did a great job between us of representing the city in a national environment being hosted by our national carrier. I'll miss you. I'll miss you at the board table, at the events, and just the work that you do around town. I really hope we'll continue to catch up. But thank you very much indeed for everything that you've done, for the sacrifice that you've made, and for the legacy that you should be very proud to leave behind as you go on to the next stage in your life. And we wish you the very, very best with that as well. Thank you.
Ngā koe, Jonah. It's a privilege to mihi you in a public setting, and I guess the issue of going third is everything's pretty much been said. But you know, for a number of years, you've actually put the city first. Your commitment to Ōtautahi has been absolutely amazing, and I'm so pleased that you're actually putting yourself first now and your family. That's really, really important. I think it's quite hard to express in words. Just your mahi, your araha for Ōtautahi and for Christchurch NZ and what you have done. So I guess for me, I'd like to step outside of my comfort zone and just do a bit of a waiata for you. Te aroha, Te whakapono me
te rangi mahi e, tato e.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Mike. Amazing.
Dawn wants to say something as well.
Joanna, we also thought it was fitting from the staff perspective that we also wanted to say our thanks, and from me personally. So I wanted to talk about Joanna the person, not just Joanna the work. And we've all heard very clearly about the incredible work that you and the team have built through your leadership in Christchurch NZ. But that's on behalf of the people that live here and work here, and it's on behalf of the council as the shareholder. So when I say I want to speak about the person, the professionalism that I saw from day one, coming to a completely new country, you were one of the first people who reached out to me as the new chief exec here in the City Council. That professionalism was always around how do we achieve the best, and how can we, i.e. Christchurch NZ, help the council deliver for the city. On a personal level, you speak not just about collaboration, you live it. And that example has helped the council also move by having a partner that we can genuinely work with closely, who always thinks about what the challenge is but comes with the solution. That comes from within, that comes from you as a leader, and is also fed through to the team that you have supported and grown in the last 4 years. So on behalf of our staff, we want to say thank you. We wish you absolutely the very best for the future for you and your family, and completely agree with Mike about why you've taken the decision is absolutely right. But don't think you're going to escape. You've moved into a different world, and we intend to ensure that we have those close working relationships continue. All the best.
Kia ora. Thank you, Dawn.
Te whakaro kei roto, toro nātu aku ringa ringa, te huinga o te kura. Te kākano i ruia, te repo are are, toro nātu aku ringa ringa, te huinga o te kura. Toro nātu aku ringa ringa, te huinga o te kura.
Thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tay. I'll see you on the other side.
Excellent. Okay, we'll move to item 16, which is Christchurch City Holdings. I think Claire and Tony, are you on Zoom? Oh yeah, I can see you there, Tony. I think. Tony, can you turn your mic on? Claire, what about you? We can hear you, can we?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Sam?
Yeah, I can. Yep. I can't hear you though, Tony.
Oh, sorry.
Can now.
I should be on.
Oh yeah, that is. Sorry. Yes, I can.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Perfect. Okay, Leah, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. I'll let CCHL obviously present their annual report. Just a couple of things to note from us. Really good result for the year from all the subsidiaries. Very positive, especially given the COVID environment, which obviously we're still not through. And the only other update to our covering report is the fact that the AGM will be of the CCHL will be Zoom meeting now, and I think you should have all received the invite to that. And so we will need both the proxy and an alternative to be voted in for that. Other than that, I'll hand over to the CCHL team.
Great. Tony or Claire, who wants to kick it off from your end?
I can do that. So I'd just like to take the reports, including the annual report, as read. Just like to note that Alex Skinner and I attended a workshop with Council on the 5th of October, and at that point, Council and councillors had a good opportunity to ask questions there. So the purpose of today's meeting is to note receipt of the annual report.
Great. Is there anything, Claire, you want to add?
I'd just like to add and sort of really echo Leah's comments that it's a really good result considering the uncertainty that we've had in the last financial year. And today certainly has highlighted how we're still in a period of uncertainty as we go through the COVID. Other than that, we present the report.
Great, thank you very much. Does anyone have questions? Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. I was just interested if, I know that one of the things that we've asked is to work across the group of companies to look at efficiencies. And I was just wondering if there's like a sort of property strategy for the group. I just was quite interested in the enable moving back into the central city into a private building, for example, and whether there's any thought to working as a city council and CCHL around property type decisions to try and reduce costs and get greater synergy.
Tony or Claire, that's probably a question for you.
Thanks for that comment, Yanni. Having a sort of a group strategy is we haven't considered at all, but certainly always open to consider those things. I mean, we have to be a little bit careful. I mean, Enable is a separate operating company and their own independent decisions, but it's certainly something that we can talk about in the forum.
I'll just add to that too. Just some examples of that though are CityCare are actually, they moved their head office out to one of the airport properties. So it is considered and looked at as part of that as well. So,
yeah. Anything else, Yanni?
Oh, obviously we've asked around just looking at it's just 5.10.13. So narrowing the gap between the highest and lowest remuneration levels. Obviously, that's not going to be reported until next year's annual report. But do we have any sense of what's happening with chief executive remuneration, what the trends have been over the past year? I know there's been a number of new chief executives employed.
Tony or Claire, have you got any answer or anything for that?
I don't have that information to hand, Yanni, but I can certainly discuss that in a forum.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. Does anyone else have questions? No, it's pretty straightforward. So we've got a resolution up there, which is to receive the annual report and appoint me as proxy, which I think we did last year as well, Leah, didn't we?
Yeah, so obviously we, as I said, the AGM is on Zoom, so we just need, as long as you're going to be there. Yeah. But we also need an alternative as well, just in case something happens.
Sure, so that's got the chair of the AGM as the alternative? That's what it's got at the moment.
As proxy and the chair of the... That doesn't make sense.
I don't know why that...
And the chair.
It'd
So I don't think it would be the chair of the F&P obviously is Andrew, which I don't think is appropriate. So we just need another councillor or staff.
Jimmy will probably... You're happy to do that?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll just change that to put Jimmy in there. Okay. I'll be available for it.
Thank you.
You can't. Who's the chair of the AGM? Anyway, it's all right.
Is that all right?
Yep, it's fine.
Great. Okay. Would someone like to move that? Tim will move it. Pauline will second it. Is there any discussion? Yanni? No? Just checking this stuff.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll put that to the vote. All in favour say aye. Aye. Against? It's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Claire and Tony. Okay, Andrew, John.
Thank you.
efficient.
Thank you. So now moving to item 7, the performance report for September. Important to note that this performance report relates to a period where there's been an effect, obviously, of the COVID level 3 lockdown and also the ongoing level 2 restrictions. So we need to look at the performance in that context. So Peter, if we take some introductory remarks first and then move to questions. Thank you.
Sure. Good morning. Before I commence, is there any premium on your time today given developments around the city? Do I need to keep...
We're keen to keep moving as quickly as possible.
At pace.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. Look, this is the headline report against the key organisational performance targets around service delivery, capital project delivery and planning, as well as finance. It's meant to provide you with a big picture overview before you go into the detailed reports that follow. I'd just like to note that the supporting managers who I would normally have here, I've requested they don't attend, partly for distancing reasons, but also because many of them will be very busy preparing. We all have business continuity plans in place so that if there is an alert declared, those managers are busy getting ready in case that occurs. Right. The bottom line of this report is that we're good at things we control and we've taken a hit on some things that we don't. By that I mean service delivery and financials are looking good despite lockdown impacts earlier in the year. Capital program has had some effects, obviously, from lockdown and the fact that it was tools down for that period. Projects were stood up again quickly, and Ruth will talk to that again later, and in particular going forward into the annual plan. The bottom line on levels of service is that we're actually above target, and it's the best result in since about July 2020, trending upwards. Now, this is pretty good given that we've lost some things due to the fact that facilities simply couldn't open during lockdown. So their throughput, their attendance rates were lost for the year, and there's no way to get that back. Despite that, we're actually above target, which has been a struggle in some years when we didn't have lockdown. So that gives some idea of how good the service continuity has actually been. I can refer you on the first page of the report to what you might call the bubble diagram at the bottom of the page, which shows the major activities of council on a graph of bang for buck, so service delivery and financial spend. The sweet spot is obviously high up there where they're on budget but also delivering their levels of service at the same time. You'll see some drift for rec and sport, which is mainly due to revenue loss during lockdown, and also some drift for transport, which is again revenue loss and some satisfaction measures. And water supply is a mixture of consumption, which was high, and satisfaction measures. Now the detail will follow. I will stress that the managers have business continuity plans in place, as I mentioned earlier. So if we do move into an alert, I expect the transition will be relatively smooth. We've done this before, and that's why we're at the position we are now. Capital projects, Ruth will go into detail. You can see that we're at 76 against the target of 90 for watch list and roughly 70 against the target of 85 for non-watch list. That's to be expected given the tools down situation earlier in the year. If we go again, then obviously there will be an impact for that as well. Now, some of these things performance for the current year won't move, but we're briefing you on the 2nd of November for the annual plan about proposed changes. There'll be a staff recommendation of proposed changes for the capital program. They involve some bringbacks and move forwards. You'll see that on the 2nd, but I'm just flagging that the situation is fluid and moving. Capital planning is another target, and the purpose of that is to make sure that while we're focused on delivery, we're also feeding the other end of the pipe, and there are good plans in place for capital to be actually built. We're at around 40%, 38.5%, for plans to be ready by the 1st of March next year. So ELT has discussed this. There's a process in place to focus on this. We probably need to look hard at this aspect. Below that is a complex graph that I won't dive into too deeply here. The purpose of it is to put some high beams out into the future on the capital program and its performance in the future. The idea here is to see all of CCC's proposed delivery in one place, so core and external, and match that against what's actually happening. And this will spring into life a bit more as you see the annual plan develop. It'll be updated every time you see this so that you see what has moved in and what has moved out. Financially, we're in a terrific position. There's a $7 million surplus and the capital program is well within target for spend. So that's the high level overview. Obviously, Ruth will be talking to you about the detail around the capital program. Leah can talk to you about the detail about the financial position. And at that point, that's the overview. I'm happy to receive questions or however you'd like to handle it, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. So let's move to questions, if there are questions. Does anybody have questions on this report? So Pauline.
Thanks, Peter. Just on the bubble graph.
Yep.
You said you had more detail about the water supply being so low. What's the reason for that? Is that the satisfaction survey, or?
It's a mixture of some satisfaction questions. The last one had some negatives about, for example, smell and taste, as chlorine.
Yeah.
And there's also the consumption measure. The city's consumption went up past where we expected it to be.
Yeah, which is, is it lack of rainfall, maybe? Or?
I can go to the, it's
usually summertime when the consumption moves up, isn't it?
Yes, but I think that maybe if you can give me a moment, I might just take on board what they've got in the comments, if you just give me a moment to read it.
Okay.
There is an uptick in water use. There's also leakage rates.
Yeah.
So they're the contributing factors.
The leakage rate is something we haven't been able to get on top of very well.
That's a global issue, and 23% is the figure they've put there.
Yeah. Thank you. It's just that sorry Andrew, when it sits there in that bubble, it looks quite alarming, but actually when the description sits there behind it, it's not so alarming.
There is a good story.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. Just on page 25, it just says that we're waiting on the year-end results for our water supplies and for the responsiveness and for the quality. And then there's just a comment, there's general dissatisfaction across Christchurch regarding water supply. So when are we likely to get those results?
As I said, the managers aren't here. Helen will be, I think, quite busy, but I can take those questions away to her. Okay. I don't know the technical data or what's underneath that or how it's measured, but I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I think that would just be useful. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Anything further? All right, so we've got a recommendation then to receive the report, which I'm happy to move. Jimmy Chen will second. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. So now moving to item 8, Capital Project Performance Report. So Ruth, welcome to the table. Thank you for the report. And if there are any introductory remarks that you'd like to make, and as we have in previous months, just including any commentary on supply line, cost escalation, those sort of issues as well.
Great, thanks. Good morning, everybody. So, Capital Project Performance Report, this is data as of the end of September. I'd just like to start with providing some responses to some of the queries that we had last month on the committee. So last month we had a request for additional information around our CRAF program. So we've provided a little bit more information around those area improvements and how they're progressing in the consultation phase. That's in the external funded report. And then further information around the smaller packages of work within the Road Safety Priority Project will be provided at the next UDAT committee. As we draw down funds within those area improvements, you will get visibility of those projects in this report. In terms of the action item that we had with KiwiRail, the letter has been sent, we've received a response, and we did hold a meeting yesterday between Council and KiwiRail and have made some progress. So we're going to be having meetings on a more regular basis with management from both KiwiRail and Council, and we will be monitoring the outputs that are required both short and long term across the program. We did also highlight the importance in delivering our government-funded shovel-ready projects and the dependency that we have on them in order to deliver those projects. So it's important to note, I will talk about supply chain risks and issues and cost escalations in terms of our council impacts, but Kiwi Rail are also experiencing those impacts, and that also includes skilled resources and being able to maintain and attract them. So in terms of the current forecast to 30th of June, we are forecasting a delivery of 98%, including external funded, that's sitting at 99% delivery against budget. This month, we have provided a graph, this is on page 35, that shows our current progress towards the committed budget of 486 million against how we've seen spend in previous years. So you'll see the green line there on page 35 shows that we're in a similar position to financial year 21. We spent 394 million in financial year 21. However, given the increased budget that we have this year, we need to be ahead of where we were last year. So we'll get the delivery units to speak to deliverability shortly. Firstly, I'll just talk to some of the overall program impacts and the risks and issues in relation to COVID. So last month we had a request from elected members for additional information. Impacts from COVID are from page 69 in the report, and there has been some updates since that report. So in terms of cost, we now have confirmation that we are expecting 63 variations against the 110 projects that were mobilised prior to COVID. To date, we've got 41 of those claims, and we've finalised 20 of them. So at the moment, our project managers are saying that we'll be able to absorb those additional costs within the current approved budgets per project, but we don't have enough information yet to say that that's across the board. So the detail of the claims are commercially sensitive, so the detail will not be in this report, but I will provide you a view of this at a high level in future months. In terms of time impacts, we're centralising the information across our whole capital program around whether or not the delivery dates have been impacted by the 3-week lockdown, and will provide visibility to the committee, as we did last time we had COVID, in future reports. In terms of supply chain and cost escalation risks and issues, our program is and will continue to be impacted by these. In addition, there is a risk in retention and recruitment of skilled staff because of the current climate. All of these issues do mean that we may deliver less and our projects may cost more to deliver. So last month, as Councillor Turner said, we did commit to providing you an update on this on a monthly basis. So I'll speak generally to the capital program, and then I've got Jane in the room who'll be able to provide an overview of what central government is doing to address the issue. So current issues being experienced are not going to go away anytime soon. The industry is predicting that this is going to last for another 12 to 18 months. We are also moving into a peak time for shipping, which is from November to March, and the expectation is that demand is going to increase by 18% from what we saw last year. So at a summary level, our capital teams are mitigating the risks and issues at both a project but also at a program level. At a program level, in summary, we are reviewing the upcoming pipeline of work, purchasing equipment and supplies in advance, and providing contractors a view of our forward works. At a project level, we are ordering early, purchasing by council and novating to the contract where possible, and maintaining close communication with the supply market. We are also rephasing work within projects so that we may not be able necessarily have to impact the overall completion date. So visibility of the current program and the projects that are currently being impacted within your report from pages 72 to 80, and there's an update from what we provided last month. Those projects are shaded in yellow. Is Jane in the room? Welcome.
Hello.
Oh, I won't pull it out from under you. So Jane's going to provide an update on what central government are doing to address the current issues in relation to supply chain and cost escalation.
Good morning. So Ruth's already really given a great overview in terms of what's going on from a council perspective and the mitigation that we've got in place, which is very similar to what we spoke to last month, and that mitigation for the best part as much as possible is working for us. The major issues globally are still the shipping cost, the lead time, the congestion in ports, the consumer and buying habits are causing issues with supply and demand, and there is a major labour shortage, and I think we feel that probably more than most. From a government perspective, which is what I promised to provide you from last month, we've done some discussions, we've looked at some information, we've managed to obtain what's going on and what the government, or central government, are trying to do to support the issue. Primarily their reach goes to helping with logistics and freight. So that's really where they can have an impact to support us, and so that's what they focused on. So in May 20, there was a scheme called the Ministry of Transport implemented the International Air Freight Capacity Scheme, which is they call the IAFC, to support the transport of goods that had been significantly affected by the loss of movement from passenger aircraft. The scheme was intended to enable transport of essential imports such as medical equipment or high-value exports. There was 372 million allocated, and that was part of a wider 600 million aviation support package. The funding was provided to airlines and other aviation carriers on contracts to guarantee flights and increase air freight capacity. The scheme acted as a subsidiary to reduce the high costs of freight brought on by the lack of passenger air travel. So that scheme actually delivered $13.5 billion worth of air freight, and it was carried through that scheme. Under the scheme, importers and exporters were required to pay for their freight on a commercial basis. So that scheme is mostly ended, and it's been replaced with something called Maintaining International Air Connectivity Scheme, so they call that the IMAC. So that scheme was very closely connected to how the first scheme was created. That scheme was commenced in March 21 and is expected to continue to March 22. There was 195 million in funding allocated, and that's administered by the Ministry of Transport. All potential air services, including airlines and cargo carriers, were invited to submit proposals to receive funding under the scheme to guarantee air freight routes. So that's really to support them being able to get, obviously, materials and equipment to the country. Another scheme that's been created is the Essential Transport Connectivity Scheme, so the ETC they call that. This provides supports to air, land and marine transport. It's to provide short and medium term capacity for regional connectivity and essential services. This again is administered by the Ministry of Transport. The scheme began in May 20, is expected to conclude in June 22, obviously depending on passenger transport recovery and how that actually goes. Central Government allocated 30 million to this scheme for aviation activities as part of the wider 600 million aviation relief package, and a further 20 million was allocated to non-aviation initiatives such as land and marine transport. NZ Trade and Enterprise is also supported, so they've created a supply chain review service for their customers with external expert advice available to them on how to manage their supply chains, essentially trying to help them where they're heavily reliant on international trade and where they're trying to help businesses source substitutes, which obviously will have a knock-on effect and help us with our programme. In May 20, Trade and Investment Ministers across several countries, including New Zealand, made a joint commitment to overcome supply chain disruption. The statement acknowledged the need to avoid importing trade controls, such as tariffs, that may restrict the flow of exports. The statement encouraged measures such as increasing the efficiency of customer processes, safeguarding logistical connections of goods for transport, and refraining from trade restrictions on essential goods. The statement does not stipulate funding or a timeline, but it's thought that the bilateral relations will likely support the flow of goods and services into New Zealand. And finally, Council has been heavily involved in a supply relationship management scheme run by MB. That was already initiated before COVID really took hold, but essentially a lot of the conversation and topic which has been taken up to central government from local government is about this constant issue we've got to keep our eye on, essentially, so that they're talking about how they can keep mitigating the issue. And that's critically important to us because COVID is not the only reason supply chain has struggled. COVID has essentially tipped the supply chain over. So what we're seeing is a change that will change between now and the next 12 and 18 months. And in that time, we have to really sit and watch to see what the new normal looks like, so our mitigation can continue to change and evolve to the point that then in 18 months' time, this is how it's going to look, so this is how we're going to need to continue to work. So I think that's probably important to note at this stage. And we're seeing some really, really positive steps by our business units, certainly around how we design, do we worry about materials at design? Are we going out for early packages, etc.? So I think it's hurting us a little bit. For the best part, I think that's absolutely the best thing we can do. And I think our supply chain relationships now are the most important thing to us and will continue to be. So that's where we are.
Do we want to ask any questions of Jane at this point?
All right, so yeah, are there any questions for Jane? Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. And I guess at a higher level, I guess the question I wanted to ask is, have you identified any projects that we should actually just not proceed with because of the risk of the materials and the increased cost?
I think I'd have to.
Yeah, so we monitor the risk on all of the projects frequently, so our business units are across that, and we have steering groups where we're looking at that as well. So where there is increased cost and it makes no sense to do it anymore, we would definitely consider that. To date, there hasn't been a situation where we've needed to make that decision.
Right. So, just in regards to the materials, are we looking at a high level of more locally sustainable materials? And when are we likely to get any sort of indication on that?
As part of the full design processes, everything's looked at anyway. So what the most important thing at this time is that COVID's now in the pot. So one of the first things that when we consider design that's considered is materials. Are we going to be able to obtain them? What's alternative? What's the lead time? And when you think about lead time, naturally local is going to be a shorter lead time unless the pressure and demand has caused the local to have such a workload they can't meet our demand. So there's a few questions that we ask at that stage, which and local goes in the pot there in terms of, is that best for us? So if that makes sense, it's part of the wider decision, because local might not necessarily be possible, they might not be able to service us, but we look at that at design stage at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Aaron?
Yeah, so with monitoring cost increases and freight and so on and so forth, it keeps going up, and is there a point where we and other councils and government start to look at prioritising the spend for an amount of time to take the heat out of the market, because it's driving inflation? It's a global issue as well, but when more and more governments keep announcing massive spends, you've got more people trying to buy the same number of items. It only ever does one thing: those items go up. It's essentially almost a global Dutch auction.
Yeah.
So at what point do we kind of go, you know what, we're going to have to just put the brakes on a few projects, because there's the old saying that it's never cheaper to build now. It's also a saying it's never more expensive to build now, because you're buying at peak. At what point does that happen?
That's a big question.
Or does it not happen? We just put the rates
It's
up?
a big question, and I guess that would be a central government and local government initiative, because if we were to, let's say, hold our programme, is the Ministry of Education going to hold their programme? Are we going to prioritise from a central government perspective as opposed from a local government up? So in terms of answering your question around how we, and you're right, that is the supply and demand issue, that would have to be a collaborative relationship at sort of central and local government, rather than just us deciding to do it, because essentially all that will happen there is we will suffer. That's the issue.
So what do you mean we'll suffer?
Well, if we hold our programme and no one else does, we're now behind in our programme, and how are we going to catch up if we've still got this issue in front of us because nobody else is holding their programme or not doing what's essential, if that makes sense?
Someone must look at it economically and go, there's a point where you just can't afford it anymore, and you create hyperinflation.
Yeah.
And then we're putting up rates at exorbitant amounts because you have to pay those bills or borrow more money. I mean, it's
All right, so is there an answer to the question from staff? I mean, you know, you've acknowledged the question, you've provided an answer. Is there any further comment from staff on the matter that Aaron's raised?
I mean, the comment is maybe that's another council debate to have in terms of how you'd want to work with other councils, etc., and to try and mitigate the issue. not necessarily a decision we could make for you, because we would impact in the programme that you've asked us to deliver,
Yeah,
essentially.
I mean, the starting point is that we're delivering the programme.
Yes.
If you were coming to us with recommendations to do other than that for good reason, they're obviously recommendations that we would consider.
Yes.
But what you're suggesting is that that would need to be wider than just our own conversation.
Yes.
It would need to be other councils and government
Absolutely.
agencies as well.
The big spenders in the market, basically,
Yep.
is what you want.
Yep.
I think we can do some more work in terms of what the impact currently is within our program and where the cost escalation actually sits, because the size of the issue in terms of the program is not visible at present.
Yeah, I mean, this is a live issue, and it's the reason we've asked for updates on it monthly. And I think if there was any further thinking that you wanted to bring back on any of the matters that have been raised in this meeting to the next meeting, if that was appropriate, that would be good. I mean, I'm confident that you're keeping an eye on all of these issues, and if there was anything you were wanting from us by way of guidance or decision making, you would be coming with those questions to us. As long as we're working in that environment, then we're in a good space.
Yeah, and I think it's important to acknowledge the economics in the industry globally are saying there will be a normalisation in 12 to 18 months. So we will see what it looks like going forward, and I think that's probably an important point. It won't continue going up forever.
Yeah, and in the current environment, defining what normalisation looks like is increasingly difficult
tough,
as well.
yeah.
All right, other further questions? Phil?
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. With going forward in here, just so I'm clear, it says about the 47 in Three Waters, how the Littleton Harbour wastewater scheme. I thought that was done, and there was only a little bit to join up to get the wastewater. It was all done through the harbour and to pumping stations and stuff like that, but. It's just about every month we're we're spending about $1 million on it, but I thought it was nearly done.
So the completion date for Littleton is at the end of June, and the biggest spenders in the construction phase, which is what we're in right now. So you can get a more detailed update from someone in the room around Three Waters. When Helen's up at the bench, I'll get her to answer that.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so just in terms of process, I mean, given that Phil's asked the question, Helen, do you want to raise that now? But what we were looking at was questions specifically for Jane.
Oh, sorry.
And then as we get the managers up, we'll look at those areas. So actually, Helen, you might want to just address the matter that Phil's raised when you speak to your item when you come up.
Sorry.
That would be best. Thank you. So moving on, are there any other questions for Jane on the matters that she's raised or areas of her work before we move on? Okay, Jane, thank you very much indeed. So, Ruth, now take us to the next part.
Excellent. So we'll talk about deliverability by unit now. So our current forecast on page 43. So just in terms of accuracy of forecasting to date, this year we are at 95%. So we have spent 95% of what we've forecast, which is excellent so far. There are, however, some big months forecast for the future, which you can see on page 43. So we'll bring up Lynette first in terms of transport. So they're forecasting 164 against a budget of 144. In financial year 21, they delivered 141.
What did you want to talk about? Sorry.
Deliverability. How are you going to do it?
Thank you. Sorry, it's been one of those mornings. How are we going to do that? So we are running our program very much this year, very much the way we ran it last year. We are over expecting things to go wrong through the year, so we are over forecasting at the moment. I do anticipate that will come back closer to the budget by the end of the year. We have a number of, as I've talked to you before, we have a number of very big contracts out in the market, bombing along at the moment, and actually making really good progress. Marshland Bridge, and the intersection associated with that. We have just let Coastal Pathway, which will get cranking as soon as we can. And we have a couple of very big cycleways that are moving very quickly and making good progress. So that is what's keeping spend up, which is different to what it was at the start of this phase of the LTP last time round.
Great, thank you. So you're happy to take any questions on the transport area? Okay, nobody's signalling questions, so you might be off the hook. Great, thank you very much. Thank you.
Helen, so for Three Waters, currently forecasting 176 against 203.
Good morning. Welcome to the table.
This is Mark.
Yeah, so the current forecast for this financial year, we're focusing 175 million. I think it was 213 was the original budget. We're struggling with resourcing in the current area, which is impacting us. We've lost a few staff leave the organisation, so we're a little bit behind where we would like to have been. We've had a few interruptions, of course, with COVID, but we're starting to recover back from some of that. But we're signaling a $175 million delivery at this stage, so quite a bit of a carry forward into financial year 23 or beyond.
Thank you. So Phil had got the question that he raised about Littleton in particular. So do you want to respond to that first, and then we'll take any other questions?
Yep. So the Littleton wastewater scheme, the last part of that scheme involves the connection down through the tunnel down to PS15, and that's the bit part of the work which is underway. That entire scheme, there's several portions of that scheme.
So that's through the tunnel that you're talking about?
Yeah, from the exit of the tunnel down to that connection.
Yeah, I knew there was one bit missing, but I thought it was sort of just from the tunnel, out of the tunnel, just joining a bit up, but that's where the cost is, in the tunnel.
It is. So there's a number of components of the overall scheme.
Okay.
They've been commissioned. We've got a number of the treatment plants which have now been converted to pump stations.
Yep, saw that, and all the pipes in the harbour are done and all that sort of thing. But so that's where that dollar value is.
So the final, if you like, the construction aspects are the tunnel, which is remaining.
Yep.
The pipe from the tunnel
Thank
to
you.
the PS15, which is the thermal station.
Thank you.
And then there's the final commissioning of the entire scheme.
Yep. Now, just one more question, if you don't mind.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
With what happened in the paper early on in the week when we're talking about how many leaks we've got in our water system, why should we get all our contractors to go and do leaks and not worry about, we are changing pipes. I drive down Graham's Road every day and the guys are replacing a pipe, which is cool, it needs replacing, and they're doing a lovely job at night time and all that sort of thing, but it's not leaking. I know it's at the end of its life, but should we be concentrating on where the leaks are coming from, because that's the bottleneck or pinch point or the bit that the public are worried about?
The leaks are, which you see visibly, are very minor leaks. Okay, there may be quite a number of them, but it's minor in the scheme of things, and it would absorb a number of contracting resource, maintenance contracts, to run around chasing after these leaks. We are addressing them, don't get me wrong, but in the scheme of things, its contribution to the overall leakage rate is quite minor. The biggest wins to be had are in addressing the actual pipe, targeting the pipe renewals.
Okay.
So that's where the focus is.
With just a sort of a tongue-in-cheek thing, with what happened yesterday, should we be doing any work on our water pipes? And it's like putting a new motor in your car before someone comes and flogs it. Should we should we be spending any money on things like that? Be
So
quiet.
I'll take that one.
Good.
We have responsibility for the next 3 years for
Right.
the 3 waters, and we need to ensure that we are delivering.
Okay. Phil, you're assuming they get it over the line.
Yeah. Oh, Andy.
All right, thank you. Sarah.
Thanks for that. I'm just sort of following on from Phil's point there about what was reported in the paper, and it was reported that we were saying that funding was an issue for getting everything back up to scratch. But when we went through the long-term plan process, through the workshops and bits and pieces, we were clear that we were willing to put on as much as we could deliver when it came to the funding. And so at one point through that process, we added an extra $30 million because we were told that we could deliver an extra $30 million worth of water infrastructure improvements. But that was as much as we could deliver rather than funding being a constraint. And I know I, for one, would have put more funding on if we were told we could deliver more in the way of water infrastructure. So where does that sit?
So so it takes time to step up our delivery, and we are stepping up our delivery. So last year we spent around 150 million in 3 waters. we're stepping up this year, and we need to step up to about 250 million per year
Yeah.
to get on top of the backlog of renewals
Yeah.
and to cope with growth and improvement works.
Yeah.
So that is stepping up with
Yeah.
time. I have to say that COVID lockdowns are not helping
Yeah.
that step up, nor are the materials shortages, and nor are the skilled people that
No.
we need helping.
Yeah.
So the lockdown and the lack of ability to recruit from overseas is hitting the whole sector. So not just within council, but our contractors and our consultants, all of the people who do the design work. So at the moment we're facing a number of constraints in stepping up,
Yeah.
but we are stepping up as much as we can and as quickly as we can. But you'll remember from the long-term plan discussions that getting on top of that leakage rate is a long game.
Oh,
It's not a
absolutely.
short game. So it will take us a number of years to get in front of those renewals
Yeah.
and to start turning those figures around. The other thing that we are doing though is we're upgrading our meters across the city, and it might be pertinent to, especially given the question around leaks, it might be pertinent to talk about a particular one last week where we forgave a $53,000 bill on proof of an $800 fix. So there was a major leak. Nobody saw that leak because it was straight into the Waimak gravels that we're built on here. Nobody saw it. There was no sign of the leak on the surface at all. And the first they knew was when they got a massive bill because they were only being read every 6 months. So that $53,000 bill has been forgiven on proof of fixing that leak, which only cost $800. So increasing our meter reading to 3 monthly for all meters across the city for both commercial and private premises is going to help us detect those unseen leaks right across the city on the private side, as well as getting those leaks on the public side. So we are doing everything that we can to get on top of leaks, as well as the renewals program.
But so there's probably potentially a significant amount of the leakage that's reported that actually is in the private systems as well.
That's correct. So it's on
Yeah,
both the public and the private side. So having the changing our meter reading, particularly across the residentials, from every 2 years to every 3 months, will help us detect those leaks.
Yeah. But just to be clear, that if council had put more budget on in the LTP for the first 3 years of the LTP for the water stuff, could we have delivered more than we're planning to deliver? Because that was the kind of
Not
the
without
implication.
sacrificing something else, no. So what we proposed through those iterative series of workshops was as much as we could deliver.
Yeah, that's great, thanks.
All right, thank you. Pauline.
Further to Sarah's question, do we have a figure on how much of those leaks are private and how much are public?
No, not at the moment, but we will have soon. So we're introducing a number of meters across our network so that we can do a water balance, but we haven't got them all there yet. So that's part of the Smart Water program and the rollout of those additional meters.
Yeah, because currently the finger's been pointed clearly at council for all of it, and now we're being told it's not just us.
Most of it is within the council's network because most of the network is ours, as it were. There is some, though, also at connections and on the private side.
Yeah,
So
I know,
we'll
but the
target
thing
all
is,
of it.
there's the number of leaks, but there's the volume of leaks over time, and some of them on private land, as you just said, have gone unnoticed for several years.
Well, that one would have been for 6 months. But
Well,
yes.
I know one that went unnoticed for a couple of years too.
Yeah,
but-
there will
so
be.
that alters the figure, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that's everything on water. Thanks very much.
And finally, I just want to bring Alistair up to talk about major facilities, especially given Hornby Library and the delays that we've encountered in relation to supply chain on that project.
Where do you want me to start?
Wherever you want.
Morning all.
Morning.
So Hornby in particular has been a concern because of just the fact that we preempted the issue we currently face, which is the delay in steel. And I'll start at the reverse of the email that I've just received from Peter McGibbon, the project manager for the site, because it answers what I'm going to say will answer the question that he's raised and why we preempted this in the first instance. But he says we ordered the steel at the start of May. And as we knew, this would and still will result in an earlier start on the site than if the contractor ordered it after they were appointed. And it's a very clear position we're sat in at the moment, is that a lot of us are preempting the issues before we go into contract. We're taking a risk on board as a council and as a project-led team to try and mitigate delay, and all best intent and purposes, we are managing that process really well at the minute, albeit that it's such a very changeable environment. And Ruth and both Jane have really gone through the detail of what the country's trying to do to get over the issue. But on that basis, the steel is in Auckland now. It's due to be shipped on the 30th and then unloaded in Timaru. We have no. I'm just telling you the journey it's on. No, I'm just telling you, Timaru on the 6th of November, with an arrival on site around 13th of November. The biggest issue being that in Timaru it will go through the customs process, which is an unknown process in a very constrained market, in a very constrained port environment that's got only so many resources that can get through these containers in a timely manner. So, we are working so closely with our contractor nailers, and they are absolutely clear and understand the issues that we face. We don't want to. We are holding them in abeyance from going on site, and they are working with us and understand our situation because they know that if they land on site, we'll start paying costs to them for that delay. So they're working with us and working really closely. We know that it takes them a week and a half to 2 weeks to establish on site, and we're talking daily to them at the moment about transition of this material. That's not to say that there isn't work that's being undertaken at the moment, and that is that the contractor, in order to ensure a speedy start on site, has met and engaged all of the key subcontractors. They've done some forward planning on what parts of the program they can accelerate. Their documentation and drawings are beyond where they should be, because they want to be at a point where they can issue contracts straight away to all supply chain, and all supply chain are sat in readiness and waiting. So, it's about that closeness to your contractor, to your supply chain, to understand what you can do to mitigate. It's something that's pretty consistent right across the board for all of our project teams delivering at the moment, from what I can gather. And it's maintaining that relationship is really probably the most important part right now from our perspective, and it takes a lot of time for the teams to do that. So it's just, Hornby's a very small project in essence, but it's got a very tight-knit community trying to get it to the point where it can land on site that doesn't cost us any more money than is necessary at the minute, because we don't want to be paying 8,000 a day delays. So we're working closely. We all understand our contracts, and we all understand what our mitigations are in place. So that's Hornby for you.
Thank you. And keep us updated with that, please, as well.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. So, Alistair, that was everything that you wanted to highlight?
Yep.
So just moving to questions. So Jimmy, yeah.
Thank you for your explanation. Particularly follow the page 69 and 67, those the COVID-19 related cost and also supply chain risk. I'm concerned because those overseas the materials not only for the steel, delivery, because they have some other like a swimming pool and some other the material from Italy, from some other country, etc. Whether there is a moment still uncertainty, so will be further, to a delay regarding to this project.
So my point there around entering into contract,
yes,
with the supply chain is part and parcel of their agreement with nailers. It's the commencement on site. It's the start date is the issue. You've got to be able to tell them what the start date is. I appreciate we can't control all of those supply chains, but we're trying to mitigate everything we can at the moment. The appointment of nailers is under is a traditional project, so it's a fixed fee. They understand what that is. There will be variations to the contract, which we have contingency for, but at the minute their responsibility is to supply. So they're working with all their supply chain to try and mitigate and understand every single issue they've got. Mm-hmm. You cannot control how things travel to you. We are at the mercy of. They will give us the best intention at all times, and we will work around that and track that movement of that material coming to site, whether that be the pulls coming from another part of the world or whether it be steel coming from another part of the world. We're trying to do everything we can locally to mitigate that problem, but yeah, there are some elements in supply chain that we require from other parts of the world, and we just have to manage that process.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Alistair? Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. Just on page, I don't know if it comes under you. There was two questions I had, and page 85. We're told that that the construction program and completion date is being reviewed monthly by the contractor and Otakaro around Parakarori, but then we're told that the completion date for the main construction work is still to be confirmed. So what's the current forecast for opening of Parakarori?
So John O'Hagan did a presentation last time to the council as a whole. There will be issues against the contract that are in arbitration at the minute that will inform what that end date is. And at the minute, if you refer to any dates, or it's a contractual obligation they've got to meet, they're in arbitration at the minute on certain tasks, which is normal process under a contract. So at the minute, the date they've confirmed to us is what it is. We are still waiting for the new revised date.
So is that December 22nd?
Yeah, that's still the date that they're declaring.
Right. Even though there's monthly meetings that are reviewed.
We know, yeah. But it's a contractual obligation that they've got to meet with their CPB, and Otakaro have to work through the arbitration process to agree what the end date is going to be. And there are delays, and delays are continuous at the moment, so they are always going to impact and compound the issue they're faced with under that contract.
So we could say that forecast date is not going to be
delayed.
met. That's
without doubt, it's going to be in delay.
Yeah.
It's just what the date is. They can't tell us yet.
So when are we, like, I mean, even, I appreciate it'll probably change, but is there any idea when we'd likely know what a new forecast completion date would be?
Well, we do, obviously, you know that we sit across the PCGs, the PSGs and the project governance group as well. So we are aware they're in delay. We are aware that they are going through an arbitrary process with the contractor at the moment, arbitration process with the contractor at the minute, and that they will announce the date at some point in time. But we know that there's definitely going to be a delay. We just don't have the exact date.
Have you got a time frame for when the arbitration will be concluded?
Well, it's compounded monthly at the minute by delays in the market and materials. So I can say that when we do our next elected member update, I will work hard to define that date. And if I have a defined date in the meantime, I'll do a post-meeting note through the chair to the councillors.
It'd be good to get a sense if it was like months or years.
It won't be years, but
yeah.
All right. As soon as you get more information, if you can update us, and obviously this is going to be an area
Maybe
of
just to get a memo
interest.
around, not, it doesn't need to come as part of the official report, but even if it's just a memo, if the information comes to hand. And then the final question I had was in regards to the Multicultural Recreation and Community Centre. And we don't, obviously everything's listed as green, but we've got a target delivery date of June 21, no current approved delivery date, no current forecast delivery date, it just seems to not kind of be happening. So I don't know if anyone can enlighten us on that.
I can provide some information around the delivery date being the original delivery date and the lack of being a baseline at the moment from a process perspective.
Right.
So the original delivery date is the date that was put in the LTP.
Yeah.
Alistair will speak shortly to why there has been delays from that date.
Yeah.
We don't actually baseline a delivery date until we're past the initiation phase and we've moved into the plan phase. Plan comes after initiate, and in plan we create the project management plan. So until we've got that level of information, we can't baseline a date because we don't know enough in order to provide an estimated date.
But we approved this when did we approve it? Like 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
So in terms of the delay, I will let Alistair speak to that.
yeah, so it's aligned with obviously the MCRC is aligned with netball and Netzel, and the Netzel is being building is being established on Punawai at the moment. It's part of a sale and lease agreement, sale and lease agreement between netball, who own the current netball centre, which is going to be the MCRC, and it's basically to align with the funding stream that transfers across to Netzel, which is 1st of December this year. So the money itself will actually move out of our account into their account at that period of time. So it's a work in progress. It's they're through the resource consent and consent process, and are due to establish they're already on site at the moment in MPW at Napunawai.
So 1st of December, we pay the money.
Yep.
And acquire the building.
Yep. And then we go through the process to convert what is the netball centre to the MCRC.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Aaron.
Yeah, just quickly, Alistair, on the Metro Sport, the accessible hydro slides, did we get anything back on that question from last month?
Yeah, I think we have had feedback. It came from Craig Hutchins, so I'm just wondering if that should have been sent through to you. I haven't seen the actual memo, but we've definitely had the response back.
Can we check that, and if there is something, can we get it sent around?
Yeah, I can confirm though that there is no. I can say there's no disability access to any slides anywhere in the world currently.
Cool, so we could be world first.
I said that you'd say that.
Well, could always aim for second.
All right, if there's information that's been provided, let's get that sent around.
Sorry, and it was raised by John O'Hagan as well, because he talked about the lift to access it, and that was an expense that could be issued, it could be instructed by council, but it wasn't really viable.
All right, if you've got a memo or written information, let's get it sent around.
I'll find it, because Craig Hutchins has definitely responded, so.
We did raise
fantastic. Thank you.
A family room as well, like a parent room. Not a big one, just like the art gallery's got.
I can confirm that as well. I'll confirm that.
Because, Alistair, the attitude we could take is that if disabled people can't use it, then no one should.
Appreciate it.
Imagine that in an inclusive world.
Yep.
Crazy.
We're trying our best.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. Are there further questions for Alistair before we move on? All right. So, Alistair, thanks very much indeed, and we look forward to that further information. Ruth, anything further?
Two final comments just around the watch list and a couple of updates around that. So the enabling works for Lancaster Park is nearing completion this financial year. So we've now added the Lancaster Park redevelopment project to the watch list. It was always the intention that that would be added once the enabling works was complete. And then finally, the Barrington-Lincoln-Whiteley intersection improvement, we've baselined the delivery date for that to October 23. And we're taking advantage of cost savings and reducing the impact of the community by delivering that with the public transport improvements as well as through waters. Happy to take any further questions.
All right, thank you. Jimmy.
Just the overall general questions, but because of this time, very good, particularly regarding to your page 69 and the page 70, those the detail, the kind of the criteria, to set out COVID-19 impact, the delivery, and also supply chain risk issue, etc. But some of the projects you have followed this kind of criteria, but some of them I miss out. I didn't see the name. For instance, like Horseway Junction Road, also is kind of consider, the design, consider material, COVID-19, etc. And also the some of the major cycle route, South Express, particular section 2, 3, etc. Whether have any impact by the COVID-19 and also by all those supply chain, this kind of issue or not. I didn't see in here. Follow this the criteria.
Lynette's left the room. The only response that I've got is, as I mentioned earlier, was that we had this meeting with Kiwi Rail yesterday, and they're also encountering issues and risks in relation to the supply chain and cost escalation. And with that revised information from Kiwi Rail, we'll look to update this for next month.
Okay, I think probably this criteria will be good. We should every project should be follow this criteria and give us the more detail.
The detail in relation to the projects that are currently impacted is in that attachment. This is the information that we've got from our project managers so far.
Yeah. If there's a need for further information, Jimmy, further detailed information, maybe that can be taken offline, and Lynette could supply the information, given that we're through the transport questions earlier in the meeting.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't see that. Yeah. And last one also regarding to the major cycle route, those South Express on, let me have a look, which, yeah, on page 87, particularly regarding to the progress update and the risk. In here, the section 2, particular section 2 is from the Craven Street to Buchanan, but last year the risk comments mentioned the construction at the Waterloo Road near Waterloo Business Park, and is in construction. Actually, that's section 3 rather than section 2. Section 2 is no this section. So they probably made a mistake. Should be revised.
That again, Jimmy,
yeah,
given its transport, might be something to refer through to Lynette. If it's something that needs to be corrected as a matter of detail, I'm sure that can be done.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Business, yes.
Tim.
Sorry, Ruth, you mentioned the Whiteley, Barrington, Lincoln Road intersection.
I did.
The issue there, I mean, I know Wakata's wanted to 4-lane Hallsville Road and then it goes through to Lincoln Road, etc. What we've always said was the issue there, if you're looking at a bottleneck, is that intersection, because it's the part of Lincoln Road that goes through the historic Addington Village. So if we could, perhaps the community board could have an update with how that's going, because to be perfectly blunt, it's totally useless to do up the intersection if it hasn't been, if that roadway in the village hasn't been upgraded between Morehouse Ave and that intersection. So
my understanding is that it has been done in conjunction with that.
So, okay, if that could be confirmed, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yes.
Cheers.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, so we've got a recommendation in front of us to receive the information in the report. I'm happy to move that. Sam's happy to second. Is there any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you very much indeed, Ruth. Thanks to you and to the other presenters for the report, presentations and detailed answers to questions. Thanks very much indeed.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that brings us to 11:10. So let's now take a break till, if I said 11:20, just a 10-minute break, would that work? Yep, all right, 11:20 in the interest of speed. So let's start back at 11:20 with the rest of the agenda. So we'll adjourn till then. Thank you.
Okay.
So moving on then now to item 9, the 2021 Resident Survey Action Plan. Lynn, welcome to the table. Thanks for the report and thanks for the work that you've done on this. So if you've got some introductory remarks, this has already been the subject of a briefing, obviously, but if you've got some introductory remarks, and then we'll move to questions. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide a brief summary of the report and what we are planning to do. As you're aware, the resident survey results were reported to Council earlier this year. Highlights were areas delivering well included waste management, parks and libraries. However, we also identified a number of areas for improvement. They included roading, water and understanding of council decision making. We take our residents' feedback very seriously, and that's why this time we want to put in place a coordinated action plan. It has 5 main components. One is to really focus on delivery of our levels of service. Secondly, to enhance our customer service, culture, tools and skills. To improve the methodology and representativeness of the survey itself, because we're not convinced that it's fully capturing the wide range of community views. Fourthly, to take a new approach to communicating our performance and ensuring that it actually has meaning to our communities, as opposed to perhaps some of the approaches we've taken in the past. And finally, we want to enhance our engagement with communities so that their understanding and engagement with council decision making is improved. So the proposal is that the committee receive this report, but I'm very happy to answer any questions first.
Thank you very much. So are there questions on the report? Tim and then Jake. Tim.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lynn. Just with the B, enhance customer service, I guess the relationship between, say, the call centre, who are at the coal face, and that secondary contact into the actual business itself, be really good to understand that and how that, because at times, people say, well, I've rung the call centre and, nothing really happens. But we know that secondary, that next set of people are really busy as well. So I guess it's just that transaction and that communication. 'Cause I do feel for the call centre, because at times they get frustrated that people don't react.
So there's a couple of elements there. One is information technology and tools. So at the moment, we don't have the right level of tracking of customer service requests. Councillors received a briefing about 4 to 6 weeks ago about the Hybris enhancement. That is due to go live towards the end of this year, and also a further enhancement next year. That will give a much greater level of visibility as to where tasks are in the system and what needs to be done to close them off. So that is one specific program of work that's designed to improve that. Secondly, I think there's work to be done on culture, and so we are looking at enhancing our customer service training across the organisation, because it's that responsiveness and understanding the need for a timely, accurate response that's very important. So we have some work to do there. I think the call centre is leading the charge, as it were, and we need to expand that philosophy right across the organisation. So that's partly why that's in as number 2.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jake.
In terms of improving survey methodology and responsiveness, do you not have confidence in the methodology that the survey currently has, or are you unsure whether the results are accurate?
They're not fully representative, and I might ask colleague Kath Jameson, who is the manager of the survey, to go into a little bit more detail here. We think we can make some improvements. So, Kath.
The survey, when you're doing telephone surveys and face-to-face surveys and online surveys, obviously there are challenges in terms of getting at the right groups of people. So we want to do more about looking at booster samples, for example, of certain ethnic groups. We're looking at different age groups in the survey. We have been tracking that over time anyway, but we're now adding into every single survey questions about ethnicity and making sure that the different age brackets are in as well. So that's something that after this next one we'll be able to get a much better handle what the representativeness is of the various components of it.
Improving the representativeness, that's great. We should always be trying to do that in everything we do. But I'm just trying to clarify, you're not saying that you don't think there's anything incorrect. You don't think that the current surveys we've been running have been giving us an incorrect picture?
I don't think so at all.
Because the trend
it's
is clear.
A comprehensive program, and we've got a number of different methodologies that are used as part of the survey, the survey program, because it's obviously not just one survey. So I think the fact that we are using a number of different methodologies means that we are sort of covering many different bases, and it's really a very large scale program, and we survey over 6,000 people each year, so I'm pretty confident in it.
Oh, good, because when I read it, it sort of read as if here's all the great things we're going to do to improve, but also we're unsure whether there's anything to actually improve upon, but I'm just wanting to...
I think they're really enhancements to just make it even better. Yeah.
So changing or improving the survey methodology, will that affect our ability to compare results year on year? Because that obviously is one of the big things about tracking whether we're improving or not. If there are changes made to the survey, will that remove our ability to make those direct comparisons, or we will still be able to do that?
I think we'll still be able to track year on year. The sorts of enhancements that we're making are probably more about just adding some more information that helps us understand a little bit more about the people who are responding. We are making some reasonably minor adjustments to questions this year to simplify them a bit, particularly given that we don't know, for example, whether we might be in lockdown or with limited ability to have face-to-face contact during our main survey period. So to make sure that we can still deliver results to you early next year, we are simplifying some of the questions to make them perhaps easier for people to understand, but the essence of them is not changing, so that ability to track over time should still be there.
Thank you. Pauline.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because I'm a little bit suspicious about, must be the questions, because the top 4 or 5 are always the nice things, like to have your rubbish removed, everyone's really satisfied with that, your parks, libraries, recreation centres, the nice to have things, people go, yeah, but I wonder if as it goes down, we get into stuff that perhaps they don't understand so much about, particularly the complexities around the 3 waters, and we might get a negative there just on the chlorine, that's not us. So I'm wondering too, do you have any way that you collect and collate the positive feedback that comes through either the media, through letters to the editor, like we saw last week from a resident about the Dyers Pass Road works up there, and the praise that he gave the council for delivering that, and through elected members? Do you have any way that you collate the positive responses?
I think that Di's team do media tracking, and that information is available as well. The resident survey itself reports directly on the results of the surveys themselves, and that's for the level of service reporting. The questions are designed in a way so that residents can answer them. And there's randomisation of questions, so it's not like they get all the good stuff first. Although that said, some of the face-to-face surveys that go on over the summer tend to be services, I suppose, that people generally, probably right across the country, are more positive about, things like libraries and events and that sort of thing, versus the bigger infrastructure services where they might be more likely to be not quite so happy.
Yeah, there's another thing too that, I've used the call centre a lot, and a lot of people I've spoken to who've used it have nothing but praise for the people there. They're absolutely amazing. But the negative feedback I sometimes get back, and I think this is what Tim might have been alluding to, is that sometimes a staff member might go out to actually look at the program, and they don't seem to, they may not have the skills, and they're not actually employed for those skills, they're employed for their technical skills. So it's that barrier that will be a challenge to understand, and sometimes they don't escalate something because they'll just make a decision on the spot, it's a no, and then that's not delivered very
And we
nicely.
definitely are seeing in the results that come through that first point of contact goes really well, and
Yeah.
particularly when it's either face-to-face at one of our counters or on the telephone.
Yeah.
Not quite so great with emails, but it's that next tier down of what happens between that first point of contact and then, you know, for some people it disappears into the ether and they say, I never hear back, I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
Or they may not like the response they get. You know, there are a number of things that happen at that next tier down, and as Lynn was saying, you know, we're putting in place things that actually enhance our ability to address that level of customer service.
That's good. But I still think it's worth collating elected members' positive feedback that we get somehow and putting it at maybe parallel to this, or just because it's really important that we collect the positive stuff, and we do get positive stuff. So yeah.
So perhaps I can just make a further comment on that, Pauline, and that is that one of the opportunities that arises with the communication of our performance is that we will be able to perhaps take some of those verbatim pieces of feedback and include that in the overall report, because it is a combination of data and the actual experience of our customers that together gives the full picture.
Good.
The other key thing is we are convinced that this needs to be a completely integrated response. So it's not just the customer service team. This has to go into the DNA of the organisation as a whole, and that's what the enhancement program is designed to address.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Diane, from a communications point of view, be good to hear from you as well. Thank you.
Okay, I just was picking up on Councillor Cottle's first point about do we keep all the good as well as the bad. We definitely do. So from an internal perspective, we get a lot of really positive feedback. So there wouldn't be a week that we wouldn't get positive feedback that we actually send out to staff. And I think you do get Dawn's update each week, which has got a list of bouquets. And this is coming from all around the city, and that is definitely kept. We also do media monitoring. So while you get the media responses every day, an email, we also collate all the stories that are positive. And actually, when we analyse the stories, it's surprising. You often only notice the negative ones, but the biggest proportion are in the neutral sort of phase. You know, it could go either way. So there's probably, say, 20% positive, about 60%, you know, neutral, and then there's the ones that are bad. So it's not all negative, but people pick up on the negative.
Yeah,
so,
that's about...
Yeah, definitely we're keeping all... I could tell you on any given day what positive story came in, what negative story came in, because we do have all that information.
Yeah, but the thing is we need to, as Lynn's just explained, we need to get that positive stuff sitting alongside this to make a more holistic report.
Yep.
Thank you. So I've got Celeste and then Yanni. Celeste.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge that lots of work's been done in this space, and I think the Newsline, those sort of stories are really great, and also very great to share as, you know, elected representatives. I just wondered if we'd gone out to the public with a list of practical options that might address some of the barriers to engagement, because I see that one of the suggestions was to get feedback from the community board, but that sort of skips out the residents. So I was thinking, for example, if we did X, you know, sort of getting people to say increased use of technology at the local level, like are there any other specific ways of gathering that feedback?
The answer is we are looking at a number of these. John Fussell has a whole list. I'll try to recall some of those. Some of the things we have already done have included ensuring that the important documents are translated. So quite often we do focus our communications on people who have got the same background, English language speaking, etc. So we need a much greater diversity of opportunities for engagement. There's also a number of things that we can do in the community engagement space, and I might ask Di to comment on that in terms of the different ways in which we can encourage people to have an input. An example was the LTP tool where people could actually look online and look at what the impacts of decisions could be in their local areas, rather than just look at a 50-page document. So Di, you might like to add some examples of the engagement processes.
Yeah, so probably, we're always trying to do things differently. So I'll talk about the current engagement that's out around coastal hazards. So we've got a drop-in session this afternoon, and we may have to not go ahead with that, but we don't know. So, if we host a drop-in session, we get, for these ones, we're getting 5 people come along, etc. So, but if another organisation such as CCRU hosts a session about coastal hazards, 50 people come along. So it's really important that we actually piggyback on what's actually happening out there in the community, rather than the council trying to go it alone. So I think that's a thing that we're moving more and more into, is being where the people are and actually piggybacking on events that are already in the community. I think that's important. For the first time in this current consultation around coastal hazards, we've actually put in the Have Your Say form. Would you like to tell us what nationality you are? And then we're trying to sort of define people more as to so that we can identify what are the hard to reach communities, and actually then, as I say, go and connect directly with them. So there are barriers, and I think if we just relied on doing things the same old way, we're not going to. The public meeting days are gone. Drop-in sessions are sort of there, but as I say, we're not getting great turnouts, and it is, a big push on our staff resource, having people sitting there for 2 people coming in. We actually had one the other day where nobody came. So we had all our banners up and all our stuff there. So. But as I say, the CCRU meeting, we're expecting about 50 people, so that's where we need to be, yeah.
Sorry, just, are we getting feedback on sort of polling people on what they might think would improve engagement? For instance, some of the feedback I've gotten about the drop-in sessions, it's a great idea, but it's during the day.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's a barrier to engagement. So that maybe if there was technology incorporated into the drop-in sessions, people could...
Yeah, good idea, yeah.
Yeah. So to your point, we continually need to evolve and innovate, because simply doing things the way we've done them is not necessarily going to keep pace with what the expectations are of our communities. I think there'll be some level of experimentation, and some of these things will work and some won't. Equally, as Di has said, some of the partnering strategies can work really well. So, for example, for youth, working with Te Pai Pakari and also youth organisations across the city to get more of a sense as to what they would prefer, what is the level and nature of the engagement, be it social media, be it online, and a discussion online could be much better targeted, and that's the kind of area that we'll be developing into increasingly.
Thank you. I'm keen to keep moving at pace. We've got people that have been waiting for the next item for some time, and I'm very conscious of that. I've got Yanni and then Anne. But if we can just keep things moving quickly, that would be really good. So Yanni.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to check. Are you going to look at the way? I mean, you talk about just getting more information and using local community board forums and working more closely with community groups, and looking at how you do hearings and alternative ways for input into decision making. But are you actually going to look at the whole process? So, like, if someone comes to a community board and they're waiting for a year to get advice, or there's a public excluded briefing on the issue that they've raised, clearly they're not going to feel very engaged. So I'm just trying to understand if you're looking at a kind of end-to-end process around why people get disaffected or dissatisfied with the influence that they have, the decisions that we make, and the feeling of things are either taking too long or just not going anywhere.
All I can comment on is that closing the loop is probably the most important thing around engagement. So if people lodge a question, and I think that came up before, it's really important that, and we do have this sort of system within our unit, and I know it is in other parts of council. So someone yesterday, or we had lots of calls yesterday, for example, to the call centre about the water reform decision, and how they could actually voice what they felt about it. So our holding statement was that the government's going to release a discussion document on it, and we'll be seeking feedback through that. So we've actually collected their names, and when that document comes out, we will actually forward it on to them to make sure they get it, and that they are explained the proper way to give their feedback. So that's one way, but all the time we're trying to close that loop. When people make a submission, that then we know they're interested in certain things, and then we can go back to them when we then go out with them to the public on something else of interest.
Because I think, like, if you take the LTP, I mean, the feedback I've had from submitters is they were really disappointed in the length of time it took to get a response, and the fact that the response didn't even acknowledge the content of their submission. So, I mean, I think there's things that we could be doing, and often, like our consultations, or we've agreed, like playgrounds, for example, to be done. We've been through the whole public process of engagement, agreed to do it, and then they're delayed for almost over a year, and no communication goes out to people. So, yeah, I guess that closing the loop and also keeping people regularly informed is really critical.
So 2 brief comments. I completely agree with you. We can do better, and we must do better. The second thing is, in relation to the LTP, there was a follow-up communication to all submitters, and I acknowledge perhaps the group that talked to you did not feel satisfied. However, we also got quite a lot of acknowledgement of people who were actually very appreciative of closing the loop. So we will not get it right in every single case, but what we can do is take on board your feedback and put that into the improvement plans from here.
Great, thank you very much. Anne.
Kia ora, thank you.
Sorry, just...
Oh, sorry, Yanni.
No, just one other piece of feedback or comment really is, for those of us that represent areas that don't have access to digital as much as other areas do, I am really concerned in the trend to do a lot more stuff online, and away from sort of, the old tried and true method of newspaper or letterbox. And, like in the earthquake, one of the most successful things was people that put notices on lampposts, which sounds very old-fashioned, but actually was incredibly successful. So I guess I just wanted to make a plea that, I know cost savings and environmental reasons why we're not doing as much in hard copy, but there is a whole group of people that are being excluded because of how we're doing things digitally that we need to think about. So,
and we definitely do print still. We haven't abandoned print. We definitely put things still in advertising, still in newspapers, etc. Okay, our newspaper advertising, we have just decreased our spend slightly, but we still do use those channels. We use every channel. We're actually fortunate that from a communication perspective, we've got more channels. So, and print is definitely still one of those.
But it's definitely not being used. I mean, we've definitely reduced how we're using it. Like, I've had community meetings in Bromley, which is an area that has low access to digital, where people are only emailed out. So people that came and gave an address, nothing got sent out, and I was told we wouldn't send stuff out to people. So if they don't have email, they're excluded.
So what we can do is take that specifically on board as part of our overall communications plan and see what we can do to
I think that's really important.
Yeah. All right, great. So Anne and then Sarah. Anne.
Thank you. So to me, that's all about using the strengths that we have and the networks that we have. There might be some people in the community who are the networkers and whom you need to actually get that information to and get it out there. The other thing I think is that I don't think we can expect people to come to us. We have to go to them. And is that a resource issue? Could we have in the malls a table that is just there with, ask me, I'm from council, that sort of person. Is that a reality, or is it beyond our resource?
I think Lynn might want to comment on this, but so the answer. So you've said, can we have a table in a mall? So what mall? What mall? Do you want it every mall? Do you want a table in every mall with a staff member there? Is it a staff member that people want to talk to, or is it an elected member that people want to talk to? So, these are all options that when it comes around to things such as LTP, we will do that in those cases. But to have someone sitting there 7 days a week, it is now, I don't know that resourcing, I don't think we have got those resources to be able to do it. Or not.
I don't think it would be 7 days a week. I think it just an ask me sort of kind of identification. I'm from council, ask me, I'm here 1 day a week, even at the weekends. I know there are issues. I think the other thing is I'm really pleased that you're identifying, TPP, and they actually are the network through which you can communicate with Pilot and Youth Council, so you don't need to do all of that. But Kath, the TPP did a survey and it wasn't, they needed a bit of help, so would it be possible for your team to perhaps come and chat with TPP and help them design a survey that would be,
and we're
effective?
already talking to them, so we made that contact already.
And also the multicultural advisory group, same thing.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So thanks. Great.
Thank you. Sarah.
Thanks so much. I know you guys do a huge amount of work in this space. I'm just looking at that at the action plan here, and I'm just wondering at what point there's lots of stuff that, you know, this is what we're doing, this is what we're going to look at, those kind of things. At what point, but do we start addressing those? I guess following on a wee bit from both Yanni and Celeste, the barriers kind of issue. So we don't always know what all the barriers are. And I think at a couple of meetings ago, we were talking around some of the stuff, and Leanne mentioned the report from a year ago following that annual plan about actually talking to, it was sort of a representative group from the community about how they would like to be engaged, rather than council thinking they know best all the time about how we should engage. And so are we looking at doing, is that part of that investigate kind of work?
So I think we were sort of talking about sort of forums and which represent communities, and I know we've got a climate change workshop in about half an hour just to talk about how we're going to sort of start doing some of that behaviour change work around climate change, and we'll be referring to a sort of group of residents when we talk about that. So we're also looking at having maybe groups of residents, public forums, etc., that we can actually reference back to see what is the best way that they would like to receive information and engage with us, etc.
And are we going to be able to have residents involved in that who aren't residents who are already involved?
Yes.
So the problem is that we talk to residents groups and those kind of things. They're the groups who are already involved and not the ones that Yanni's talking about that aren't involved in the processes currently?
Yeah, definitely. We're trying to get a representative of the community.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Chair. Quickly, one question. Thank you for this comprehensive report, particular 5 initiatives, very important. But my questions are regarding to the geographic area, because council in a daily basis, we already receive all those the issues through our call center, the email, or the digital, etc. Whether we, for the next stage, we have this initiative for the survey again, we might have prepared all those information, particularly regarding to the maybe in a different ward or community board, etc. Give the people, actually you concern some like traffic issue, parking issue, tree issue, or some other issue. We already done improve how much percentages. So give them, they have sufficient information, then the feedback to us may be more reasonable. Otherwise, just continue. This one. Second one is thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. You particularly continue to kind of improvement, to survey with the wide range of the people, like age, like ethnicity, etc. Very good. Particularly, I'm very impressed with your strengthen those communication, the survey. But please, just follow this criteria. Then probably get maybe different feedback. Otherwise, 49% long-term drop. This unsatisfaction, terrible. Yes.
Thank you. All right. So no further questions. I'm happy to move the recommendation. Jimmy, you'll second. Yes. Excellent. Is there any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So now moving on to item 10, the Canterbury Multi-Use Arena elected member update. So Alistair, welcome back to the table. Barry, thank you for joining us this morning as well, and apologies for having kept you waiting for some time. We appreciate both of you being here, and Barry, thanks for making the effort to come along. Thank you.
Do you want me to just do the update on this? Yep. Yeah. So just thank you. I'll be very quick because Barry wants to talk to this paper as well. So it's just an elected member update, and it's just it just confirms the budget, but it also confirms the work that's underway with regards to B6 Watpac under the preliminary design, and it just makes a note there around confirming the impacts on programme risk contingency, escalation and total estimated cost for the arena. We'll talk to that further in a minute. And it also confirms the current delivery programme is indicative and it's based on the current design and construct procurement methodology, which we've been well reported through the process today.
Kia ora tātou. Just to talk in a bit more detail about how that indicative program date came together. So we had the reset on the 12th of August. From there, the board came together. We went through the reset process with both the project organisation, Kotui, B6 SWAT Pack, and all the user groups. We had a risk workshop on the 20th of September. We knew that there would be significant program and cost risk as a requirement or as a result of the supply chain risk. We had a 2-month delay with the conceptual design as we went through the reset, and we knew that as part of the preliminary design we would get more of an understanding of the construction methodology and the construction plan. So after the 20th of September risk workshop, we asked Kotui to give us an updated program at our 1st of October board meeting. So we were given a high-level program at that stage, and we were given the indicative program delivery date of the 30th of June 2025 on the assumption that we proceeded with an early works strategy. And it's the early works strategy that we will bring forward to council once we work that through the board at the 5th of November board meeting. And that early work strategy, which is quite normal for a project of this size when you're under program and cost escalation risk, involves 3 parts. So there's an opportunity to bring forward the detailed design. So we have a preliminary design, developed design, and then we have detailed design, which is part of the DNC contract. So there's an opportunity to bring that forward. There's an opportunity for early procurement, and there's an opportunity for starting some of the works, the groundworks, early. So one of the reasons why we selected B6 SWAT Pack is we're expecting them to have expertise in those 3 areas. They will bring forward a strategy to us, as I said earlier, to the 5th of November meeting. We need to do detailed risk assessment, both benefits and risks associated with that strategy. We'll then bring that forward to council in a briefing session, then a recommendation through to the 9th of December meeting. So if we did not go ahead with that early work strategy, we're looking at an indicative program delivery date of the end of November 2025. So that just highlights the supply chain risk that we're dealing with at this point in time. Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much for that update. I'm guessing that answers some of the questions that I would have expected people would have, so thank you for preempting that. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. When we previously considered this, one of the issues that was raised was the lack of engagement with the Pacifica community, given that this site is actually really special to them, and there was an undertaking that we would do some specific engagement and involvement with the Pacifica community. I just wanted to check if anything's happened in that space, or whether there's any support that we can give you to do that. Obviously with COVID and everything else going on at the moment, I appreciate that there's other priorities, but yeah, I just wanted to flag that in terms of the design or the project, it is really important to hear from that community.
Yeah, so there's definitely there's a stakeholder engagement plan which has been which was drafted in the early stages as an initial paper, as a draft paper that was put into the team's documentation package, and that's been updated through Nigel Cox, because Nigel's got heavy engagement through his own processes within the RSC, and I am aware that the Pacifica community have been spoken to through our development of the plans and also the cultural narrative for the whole project as well. Yeah. So it's an ongoing relationship right now as we go through from the concept design into we're deep into prelim design now, and it's an ongoing process throughout as well. So cultural narrative engagement is one of those big things that we're working on at the moment, which is informing the ultimate design. So I know for a fact that we have definitely worked with the Pacifica community.
And just like, I mean, and I know it's a kind of awkward question to ask, and I've asked it before, and it's just been ruled out. But the idea of getting any sort of synergy with other activities on the site, is that open to being considered, or is it just, you know, we're only building a stadium, so the idea of having any sort of space for other groups, or a youth space, for example, or, you know, something kind of added on that would give a greater degree of either financial return
So
or ongoing? Or?
One of the good benefits of being a council project and council-led project is the level of engagement that we have across our units.
Yeah.
So both urban and transport in particular have looked at the use of the network around, but also the use of the precinct as a whole, right, and what we can do within that precinct. Obviously, B6 WATPAC's role on Core 2 as a group is to deliver a arena on the site and within the boundaries of the designation. But our plan is about what is that space used for in and around the arena. Yeah. So working with our people inside our own organisation has been really helpful. So we are doing that. It's part of the process. It's part of the ongoing user groups that we have working, because we've got user groups every week, 3 or 4 of them on different focus groups. So it's a pretty consistent process right now, and they're all heavily engaged in the project. So that's one of the great things that we've got with it being in-house.
Thanks.
Thank you. Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Just 2 quick questions, Barry and Alistair. First one is we're the owner and the operator, so the long-term kind of budgets versus the operational. So just ensuring that, you know, sometimes in some projects they get shifted around to make one budget look better than the other, but the long-term cost of operational loading actually costs you more. So I'm just wondering, are you keeping fixated on that? And I hope you are, and I'm sure you are. The second one is the really difficult one of ensuring we're building for a 21st century stadium when we don't know quite the changes because they're happening so quickly, like Wi-Fi coverage, all that kind of thing. So if that could be.
Okay, so in terms of the first question, whole of life cost is just as important as total construction costs. So as we go through various stage gates with the program, and getting to the end of preliminary design is one of those stage gates, we'll look at the total cost for the project as well as the whole of life costs for the project. So it's top of mind. Having the chairman of the venues Otutahi at the board table, as well as the chief executive as a board advisor. Yeah. They are absolutely focused on whole of life cost and how we're going to operate the arena going forward. So be assured that's been considered all of the time. In terms of the second item, well, that's the reason why we have engagement on a regular basis with the user groups. Yep. And we've got to be pragmatic, though. There's a number of trade-offs that we're dealing with. Yeah. So that's my comment.
It's about future-proofing. The question you had was around what does it look like in another 10 years' time. I think the key thing is that the fact that we are using B6 WATPAC, who are renowned arena specialists, and we are working with both Populous, who are an international arena designer and architect, and also working with Warren Marnie here locally. What we found is that they are future-proofing it, and it's about putting in a backbone that supports future growth and future expansion, and ensuring that you have that capability to expand and run cabling if required. The DAS system, so the digital audio system that's to go in the main arena bowl, is it satisfies one need for the attendees, if you will, at the venue. But then the Wi-Fi capability is also something that we've looked at intensely around the level 1 concourse and the ground floor as well. So all of those are feeding different elements of business and business management, but also the requirements of the end user, if you will. So.
Thank you very much.
Well, I do want to make this point. There's must-haves and there's nice-to-haves, right? And there's constant trade-offs that need to be made. You've given us a very clear cost target specification, as well as a program time. So Yeah,
We'll work you through it.
Is that appropriate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
definitely.
I need to sound like it.
Thank you. Are there further questions? No further questions? All right. Thank you very much indeed for the update. This report comes to us every second month.
No, it's coming every month.
Every month, yeah?
CMUA update will be every single month.
Every
so,
month.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Incredibly useful. Thanks very much indeed, and thanks to both of you for your attendance. I'm happy to move receipt of the report. Sam will second. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. All right, so now we move to item 11, the financial performance report for the 3 months ended 30th of September. Leah, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the table. Any high-level comments you want to make on this report before we move to questions? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. So just as highlighted in the report, this report is at the end of 30th September. We are tracking on a 10.7 year-to-date surplus, which results into a forecast of 7 of the year end. However, this is based on assumptions of COVID at the time of writing this, which changes daily, as we're aware of today. But the assumptions on this one was based on us staying in level 2 to the end of October. Obviously, we know that that wasn't going to happen anymore. So we have reforecasted the October forecast out to level 2 till the end of December, which also may now seem hopeful. The impact of that is essentially it's wreck and sport, which is the biggest impact that we have when we are currently still in level 2, which would mean that currently we're at the COVID impact was 3.1 based on this forecast. It would, if staying in level 2 to the end of December, would increase that impact to 4 million. So it's about 450 net a month being in level 2. Obviously going into the summer months for wreck and sport that increases. And obviously if we head into level 3 impacts quite significantly, but we fingers crossed that doesn't happen for long. Overall, in regards to the forecast surplus, most of that is the surplus is due to increased building and resource consent revenue. Rates revenue was increased based on the for the year based on the improved growth numbers at year end. The Burwood landfill rev and higher trans waste dividends, which is all positive, and increased interest revenue. And in addition, some of the permanent differences was a surplus from the or a reduced cost in the insurance premiums for the year of 1 million, and lower. Can't even read my own writing, but anyway. So, but it's all looking not too bad from that point of view, subject to any more changes with COVID.
Thank you. Any questions on this report? Jimmy.
Regarding to the forecast carry forward, $92 million, that's around 15%, but you only identify the less cantonment multi-use arena, 26 million, but the other 65, almost 66 million, not yet identified, but how did you to forecast these, the remaining part, $66 million?
Sorry, in the capital program, you mean it?
That's on page 125. 125. 125. Forecast operating expenditure in here, capital expenditure.
So what you're wanting to know is what 60...
What is your criteria, your basis to forecast or estimate these $66 million?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find your numbers.
On page 125.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find.
So it's in the box headed capital expenditure in the middle of that page.
Under the key drivers. Key drivers.
Yeah, so the carry forward. So this is so you would have we went through with the capital program with Ruth before. Yeah, so this bases on forecast carry forwards comprise of 26 million. So if we go down to the other table, it's probably the better one to look at rather than operational. Go to capital program. So 65. So this is the unidentified carry forwards that we are working through. So if Ruth talked to you about their program in total, overall, so there's two parts to it. One is the stuff that council do directly, and then we've got things like Semua as well, which is taken into account. So this 65, so what you're asking, what is that based on? So that's...
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so...
Around the 10%.
Yeah, so I'll just get back to the explanation.
Where is affected by the COVID-19 or not?
The capital program,
Yeah.
based on the forecast of it'll be the same with regards to the operational. So it's based on the impact that Ruth talked about earlier, and the things that, yes, as at a given time, this is the impact of COVID. But obviously anything can change based on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so, Phil.
Hey Leah, just wondering about some of the money we've got borrowed. I've seen it in here somewhere. Are we budgeting $87 million for interest payments this year?
Yes, I think that is the budget in total, interest, yes.
Yeah, so if interest rates go up slightly, doesn't matter much, we will be having to pay more?
To a certain extent. Some of it, interest payment, a lot of our interest is already hedged. For the current year, so it's about 90% hedged. So where you are correct, it will go up in the event of new borrowing.
Yeah.
So interest rates. So because we haven't, it's more so our current borrowing that is our interest cost. Most of it is actually hedged. Most of it, about 90%, but it's the new borrowing.
And that's about 15% of our rate take.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Jimmy will move. Do I have a seconder? Sarah? Is there any discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you. So now we move to item 12, the Central City Residential Development Contributions Rebate Scheme. So Gavin, welcome to the table. We've already had a briefing or workshop on this one. But if you'd like to make some introductory comments, and then if there are any questions, we'll deal with those.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report recommends that the rebate scheme is closed, and there are two key reasons for that. Firstly, the development contributions charges in the central city are now significantly lower than they have been in the past. And that means that the charges are extremely unlikely to be a barrier to development. And the flip side of that is that the rebates are extremely unlikely to be influencing developers' decision making. The report recommends that the rebate scheme is closed on the 24th of December rather than closing immediately. This allows staff time to communicate with affected developers regarding the scheme closure, and also acknowledges that there are some unusual constraints at play in the development sector caused by very high levels of development and COVID-associated impacts. Just to clarify, to qualify for a rebate, a development would need to have passed its first building inspection by that date. That's the criteria that's set in the scheme criteria. Attachment A of the report is an overview of the financial situation of the scheme itself. So it shows over 1,300 residential units have been built, which have qualified for a rebate. It also shows that there is approximately $4.5 million remaining of the original $20 million. It should be noted here that the rebates are revenue foregone rather than an operational cost to the council. The development contribution revenue would have been used primarily to retire debt incurred to provide infrastructure to service growth development. The effect of this is that the rebates are largely debt funded. It also means that the $4.5 million is not a cash pool. It's revenue that the council would now collect over time. Alternatively, the council may want to consider whether establishing development contribution rebate schemes to promote other strategic goals could utilise the remaining revenue the council has agreed to forego. So attachments B and C provide an overview of two proposals for rebate schemes, one to promote the development of highly energy efficient housing and one to promote the development of alternative housing typologies. These suggestions have come forward from the Council's urban regeneration team and align with work programs that are already underway. If the Council would like a more detailed look at these proposals and any others that may be of interest to the Council, staff will provide a briefing to provide information. A briefing has been booked for 7 December if the committee decides it would like to further explore them.
That's everything?
That's me for now.
Excellent. So you've answered one of the questions that I had already, which was the date for the briefing, so 7th of December. That's great. And then my other question relates to the rationale for the end date. So we've got 24th December at 5 o'clock in the evening. What's the rationale for that date? How did you arrive at that date?
The date gives us some time to communicate with developers about the closure of the scheme and then allow them, if they're able to get their developments to a point whereby they'll qualify for a rebate. And that acknowledges that there are issues in the development sector at the moment that are effectively slowing developments down, but this gives them that 2-month period to catch up, if you like, rather than close it immediately.
All right, that's fine. Now, we've got James who's indicating that he wants to move this, and Jake who's indicating he wants to second. So that's the staff recommendation. Let's move to questions, and then we'll do that. So, James.
Do you mind if I just signal to clarify? I'm moving it pro forma. I don't agree with recommendation 1, but I agree with recommendation 2, but I'd like to introduce it, speak to it, and to help the meeting, I'll move it pro forma, but then vote against 1 and support 2. But we've traversed it well in the workshop and have done this many times, so no questions.
Right, so no question. So sticking with questions, Yanni.
Sorry, the evidence is kind of overwhelming that, I mean, people are making really good return on Central City residential. Why would we not just stop it from today or from next week?
The Council has the opportunity to do that, but that won't enable us any time at all to advise developers of what is happening and arrange for an orderly closure of the scheme. So we need to be careful, I think, that we're not springing something on a development sector that is, while it's not struggling per se, there are constraints around things like accessing skills, etc. at the moment, COVID impacts.
But sorry, just from a contractual point of view.
Yep.
In terms of the scheme,
yes.
Is there anything that contractually prevents us from closing it next week or in 2 weeks or at the end of this month?
No, there's not.
And so anyone that's entered into the discussion with us would have been advised, like we do with many other things, that this is subject to council continuing the funding or making the funding available?
Yeah, the scheme criteria clearly says that the duration of the scheme is until the council closes it or the funding is exhausted.
Right.
So in theory, you're quite correct that the council could close it without any contractual implications straight away.
And the new policy that's come in, that reducing it from about the 20,000 to the 8,000, when did that take effect?
From 1 August.
1 August.
The catchment base.
Right. So basically, before that, is there anyone that would be into the scheme that wouldn't be paying the new DCs?
Oh, most won't be paying the new DCs because they will have applied for, in the case of apartment developments, for example, they would have applied for resource consent prior to 1 August, some of them quite a long time prior, and we assess the DCs using the policy that is in place at the time we receive a complete application for either resource consent or building consent, whichever is first. So the majority of developments in the current pipeline will have been assessed under the old policy.
Right. And the final question from me is, do we have any sense of, in terms of the Central City property values, how much they've increased in the last year?
I don't have that information.
Right.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, so moved then by James, seconded by Jake. Is there any debate? James?
Look, making housing more expensive via the reinstatement of an additional cost because the market's booming, in my view, is unwise, unhelpful, and totally a step in the wrong direction. Making housing more affordable is what's needed, not council making a decision that will literally reintroduce a cost that's simply passed on to a purchaser. Trust me, housing is going to get more expensive at pace. The government's tax deductibility rule change for residential rental properties doesn't result in landlords just absorbing that within an existing margin and then sitting back and watching their investment become uncommercial. They increase their rents to cover the gap. So when costs go up or are introduced or costs are reintroduced, they're passed on to the customer. The fact is, there's a construction labour shortage. The cost of building materials has and is going up significantly. The multi-use arena should be fresh in everyone's mind if you want proof of that. By reinstating a development cost like what's being proposed, it will further fuel housing prices. If a development cost can be remitted, it can be priced slightly cheaper, which makes that dwelling slightly more likely to sell. The winner from that is someone seeking to purchase housing stock that's slightly cheaper than what it would have been otherwise. Now factor the national policy statement. Cancelling this incentive today will result in less affordable central city housing options, pushing higher density development to the suburbs that are already at capacity. We have a central city action plan, and this council has endorsed, adopted and reaffirmed it. And that goal within that plan is to have 20,000 residents living inside Christchurch Central City by 2028. The Residential Development Contributions Rebate Scheme is a key part of that approved incentive package. We currently have less than half that target population living within the central city, less than half of the 20,000 goal. In fact, we still have less people living in the central city than what we did the day before the earthquake happened. So I understand that the new DC charging scheme reduces the quantum of DCs that would be payable in the central city, down from about 22,000 on average to 8,000 on average. But it will still have an average additional cost to that development to the tune of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars. That is not insignificant, and it will have a bearing on people's choices. Development contributions have already been paid for infrastructure to service a population inside a central city that still doesn't have those population figures back to pre-earthquake levels. So look, morally, I don't believe that you can reintroduce a charge to pay for infrastructure to service a population that still isn't there yet. So further to that, it sends a very poor signal for potential central city investment. It sends a very poor signal to potential central city home buyers, and it completely undermines and contradicts a policy and an initiative that this council has adopted in this current council term. So recommendation 2 says that it will explore other possible rebate options. I agree with that. Before you cancel the current one though, like recommendation 1 suggests, let's at least know what we can replace it with and then determine whether or not it's better. So I guess what I'm saying is don't put the cart before the horse. A lack of housing supply that's not in line with demand is what's contributing to this boom. Disincentivising the development of more stock in an area that you specifically want to have more of it simply doesn't align with the council's policy that we've approved, and I do not think at all that this council can be proud to support doing that. So I will vote against recommendation 1 and vote for recommendation 2 to ensure that the cart goes after the horse. And if you wish to save suburbs from over-intensification, and if you believe the Central City Action Plan needs to be adhered to, then I sincerely hope the majority of this council doesn't then do a U-turn on that at this time.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thanks so much. Council's goal with the scheme has been to incentivise development of residential and originally commercial as well in the central city, not to subsidise home ownership. And so the goal has been to incentivise development. There is now no lack of development in the central city and no shortage of demand for those homes. If we're going to try and make homes more affordable, we need to focus on lowering homes for first home buyers, something that my colleagues voted against just within the last week. Thank you.
Yanni.
Yeah, I'd like to move an amendment for number 1, that the scheme closes at the end of October 2021.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? Melanie.
Thank you. Just like to speak to that. This money is funded from rates. Let's be really clear. This has got an annual rates cost to do, and I cannot see any reason why the ratepayers should be funding these developments in the central city. The change in value in the last 12 months of a new build in the central city was nearly 25%, 23.7%. The 12-month gain for people that had property in the central city was $90,000. So people, developers and property owners in the central city are doing really well in terms of either investment or in terms of what's being built being able to be sold. So I don't think that this scheme has any purpose in this current climate that we're in, with COVID-19 having a massive impact on our council budgets and us having to really be tight about where we spend money. This just seems like a luxury that we simply cannot afford. We have huge challenges for social and emergency housing in our city. We've just had a home ownership scheme that some councillors voted against, saying it wasn't the role for the council, and yet here we have effectively what is a rates-funded handout to some of the wealthiest people in our society. I do not believe that we should continue this scheme. It has gone on for far too long in the current climate. It should have been ended last year or the year before, but I think now's the time to say, actually, we've changed our DC's policy, which is something that I advocated from the start, where we've got a much more sensible development contributions policy for Central City to deal with the issues that some of my colleagues have raised in the debate today. And that is a much more fairer system of doing it than simply charging the ratepayers to fund these expensive properties in the Central City that have had a massive increase in value in the last 2 years.
Thank you. Sam.
Just really briefly, I mean, I know that the Labor Party in Wellington and the Green Party in Wellington are intent on pushing up house prices, but I had hoped that the Labor and Green councillors around this table wouldn't be doing that today. The reality is that this isn't margin gain. This is literally a reflection of costs.
It's not. It's factually incorrect.
Yeah, turn your mic on.
And it's your point of order. So there are no Green Party councillors around the table. There may be some members who happen to be members of a party, but they weren't elected as Greens and weren't selected.
Right.
And the same with the Labor councillors. There are some who happen to be members. It's complete misrepresentation from Jerry Brownlee's campaign manager.
Thank you for the clarification. Sam, if you continue.
No, that was a wonderful point of order. It exactly proved my point. Yeah.
Sorry, he doesn't rule on the point of order.
Was he misrepresenting?
Are we at school now? It feels like school again.
I'm happy for the debate to continue. The point's been well made.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it's just a shame we aren't focusing on the actual issue, which is economics 101. The reality, this isn't about...
Making it political, though.
Can we let the debate continue without interjection? Thank you.
It's just a fact. It's a
It was... Your clarification showed that it was incorrect.
Yeah, so it is like being at school. That's fantastic. Thanks, Sarah. The reality is, anyone that opposes, I think, or anyone that's encouraged to cancel this scheme today is pushing up house prices in the CBD. You know, this is a part of an approach we can make to make a difference in the city. So for people to not do that, I just think it's bizarre. And really disappointing that they again are taking a Wellington line.
Pauline.
Thank you. Just briefly as well, that look, this scheme has been in place since 2013. That's 8 years. We allocated 20 million. There's been around about 15 uptaken. So we have really contributed to the revitalisation of the city, I believe, and there's been plenty of time. And 3.5 staff are stating that they no longer believe the rebate scheme can influence development decision-making in the ways intended and therefore can't deliver the positive outcomes in terms of residential development that it has in the past. So basically that's saying, well, there was a time when it worked, it doesn't work now, we don't require it, therefore why, put good money after, waste good money. Arguably, the national government, the last period, actually handed over most of the residential development to one company, which has proved to be a bit of an error. That has recently been rectified, so hopefully we will see some acceleration in the building there. So, look, I'm going to support. I believe staff response to that question about December, I think, is only fair. So I'll be supporting 1 and 2.
Jake.
Thank you. The idea that Councillor Goff is worried about housing affordability for first home buyers is just laughable. This scheme has never done that. It's never got close to doing anything like that. What it is famous for, though, is just providing a nice wee buffer for property developers, which is perhaps the true intention of the scheme.
Point of order.
Sorry. Okay, yep.
He's debating. My point of order is this is not related to what we're debating. What we're debating is Councillor Johansson's amendment to change the date.
We've got one debate, which is the substantive motion that's in front of us.
We're not having a debate on the amendment.
And then I'll take a vote on the amendment and then the substantive.
We were debating the amendment.
All right, thank you. Jake, you want to continue?
So buffering out profit margins for rich CBD developers, I think, is where I was. And my ward, this is seen as really a cash kickback for developers to build investment properties that later get on-sold for Airbnb. And I'm very glad we dealt with that issue with the covenant, and this is really finishing off the job, particularly now the DC rebate, the actual cost of DC rebates, of DCs and the CBD has gone down. So I think this is a day the council can pat itself on the back for common sense, for actual economic understanding, and actually not for handing out public cash for an uncertain, unquantifiable, mythical benefit that doesn't. Yeah.
Celeste, Tim, and Aaron. Celeste.
I'm just going to keep it short. Fiscal responsibility, I hear that word. I'm in favour of it. So I think we should do it sooner rather than later. So I support the amendment to end it now. Why wait?
Thank you. Tim and then Aaron.
Thank you. As an independent councillor, just saying.
I certainly wasn't inferring you, don't worry, Tim.
And there's no point of order on that statement either.
Yeah, phew. Yeah. Look, this was brought in for a reason, to stimulate. It's done that. We're there now. So it'd be good to get back to saving ratepayers some money. So I'm going to support number 1. I won't support the Diani's amendment because I do think to allow a bit of time is fair. And I think what has been proposed is acceptable. I won't be supporting 2 because I think we are where we are, and in the process of time there may be something else, but at the moment I'm happy with where we're going.
Thank you. Aaron.
As the only councillor that's probably called for councillors to declare their political interests as a potential conflict, there's some irony sitting in the back row listening to the debate today in points of order. What's that? Not a paid-up member.
If we can have debate rather than a conversation, that would be great. Aaron, continue, please.
Difference. I think I had a McGillicuddy Serious Party sticker when I was 15, so, you know.
Why does that not surprise me?
Because you had to wear them to get into Steiner. Didn't we, Yanni? So my point is around the council set goals to have the 20,000 residents in town, and I was happy to vote with the staff recommendation, but listening to some of the numbers that James Goff ran through, he did win me over in the debate. I know most people don't come here to listen to others, but I do at times. And I'm just impressed you were listening. We're aiming for the 20,000 residents in the inner city, and for the excuse to be pulled out that we throw money at trying to subsidise an outcome is very, very rich at this table, because I think every time we throw money at something to get a particular outcome that councillors want, we should have a little bell. Problem is the bell would burn out because it would be constantly ringing in here.
So
thanks for listening, everyone.
It's been an interesting debate, but if we're talking economics, economics 101, the incentive to development is demand, and the demand is also the cause of price escalation. And I've always been concerned, particularly in the latter years of this scheme, that the incentives were not necessarily producing the outcomes that we were looking for. And certainly any suggestion that the benefit of the development contribution rebate in the central city was passed on to the pockets of the final purchaser of the developed property has never been proven. That's not to say it hasn't happened, but it's never been proven. And I suspect if it did, it would have been in the early days of the scheme when the incentive to development was required, and that's the reason it was put in place, rather than in the latter years of the scheme where the price escalation and the increased demand, the market-driven price escalation and increased demand, have reduced the need for the application of it. So I've always been doubtful of that. I'm even less doubtful of it in a high demand environment where demand is causing escalation in price. I'm very comfortable to call a halt to this today. So that means that I'm not going to be supporting as in the staff recommendation, so I'm not going to be supporting the amendment. I think it's a respectful and sensible end to it, to bring it to an end on the 24th of December for the reasons that staff articulated in the answer to my question. And I'm also happy for us to receive the briefing on any future schemes, realising that that may or may not result in anything being put in place. But I think it's good to have the discussion, particularly reflecting the fact that staff have already done the work. So I'll be supporting the staff recommendation as it stands today. Jimmy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I also support the staff recommendation, because the kind of development contribution rebate is one of the incentivized factor. But if we review the staff recommendation, particularly over the last the kind of several years, the interest rate dropped a lot to cut his historical low, to stimulate the economy, and also all those the business they develop the houses in central city also out. That's true. That's a fact. Not any back to the 10 or 11 years ago. In that time, there's different environment, because like due to the earthquake, natural disaster, no one reluctant have to develop those housing to meet the market's need. But now it's a difference, demand huge, higher, more than the supply. Also, no, that is the truth. The other one is the development contribution policy will approve this one. Also, to charge per house, the unit is $22,000, drop to the $8,000. This another intensifies to those the developer would like to develop more houses to meet the market's needs. So that's why I think the staff, the information is quite reasonable. The incentive by the fact that become more less influence, more fraction, etc. So I go with the staff recommendation.
Mike.
Thank you. I'll keep this short. It's always a shame when councillors have to continually have anti-government narrative to try and form their debate and opinion. This isn't Parliament. This is actually local government. This is the council for
Otatahi, Christchurch, so let's just keep the debate in the subject. Quite frankly, you know, Councillor Goff persuaded Councillor Curran over there with his debate, but the reality is there is no evidence to show that actually this has benefited purchasers by reducing the cost. There's no evidence. I actually support Councillor Johansson's amendment. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to put the amendment first.
Can I close it off as the mover?
As the mover, you may.
Okay. Well, to the amendment or the whole?
Well, we've
whole
had
vote?
one debate on the whole thing.
Don't I get 3 minutes on to close it? Oh, I better get. Well, I better go then.
All right, so use the 3 minutes to close the debate.
I don't think. All right, thank you. Look, demand is largely determined actually by supply, but talking about the evidence of this, we've seen this time and time again. Grant McKinnon even came in and offered to open up all of his books to demonstrate this. I have literally gone through this. Here's how it works. You don't use your own money. These are not the wealthiest people in the city. Sometimes some of them are actually the poorest because they're worth negative millions of dollars because they're using someone else's money. So to get bank funding, you agree a margin. It's called a development margin. And when factors change within your expenditure, the development margin doesn't change. You have to move other levers. So a development cost simply alters the final figure because the development margin, you're not playing with your money, you're playing with the bank's money. So that is agreed. That doesn't move. So if the cost of piling, for example, which is significantly higher in the central city, increases by $100,000 and you have got 10 units, then the price of those units is going to be $10,000 more expensive to retain the development margin to satisfy your financier/bank. So you don't need to be convinced. Do a frickin' development. It is literally on every single person's books and you can ask anyone to see it. So to sit here and have people say that they're not convinced about how to undertake a development is absolutely horrifying. Every development works that way. Go to the bank and try and undertake a development yourself and change the cost of an expense or a development cost, and you can't then take that from your margin because it's agreed. So this is, I just really fear that misinformation and chips on shoulders is what is fueling this decision making and nothing related to reality. The simple fact is you want to incentivise what you want more of. And I'm sorry the job isn't done yet. We have 8,000 residents. The goal is 20,000. 10,000 people lived here before the earthquake. This is a joke if you pass this.
So I'll put the amendment first. So all those in favour of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Those against?
No.
No. Okay, so let's take a division on that, please.
The Mayor? No. Councillor Turner?
No.
Councillor Chen?
No.
Councillor Coker?
Yes.
Councillor Cotter?
No.
Councillor Davidson? Aye. That was a yes? That was an aye. Sorry?
Yes.
That was a yes, sorry. Councillor Galloway?
No.
Councillor Goff?
No.
Councillor Johansson?
Yes.
Councillor Kean?
No.
Councillor McDonald?
No.
Councillor Major?
No.
Councillor McClellan?
No.
Councillor Scandrick?
No.
Councillor Templeton? No. And Councillor Donovan, sorry. So for the yes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and for the no's, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
So the amendment is lost. So the original staff recommendation is what we're now going to vote on.
And Mr. Chair, can I ask you to put those separately?
I will put them separately, yeah. So I'll put clause 1 first. So all those in favour of recommendation 1, say aye. Aye. Right. Those against, say no.
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 And we'll have a division on that as well.
Councillor Templeton? Aye. Councillor McLeod? Aye. Councillor McDonald?
No.
Councillor Johansson?
Yes.
Councillor Galloway?
Yes.
Councillor Toka?
Yes.
Councillor Chen?
Yes.
The Mayor?
No.
Councillor Scandrick?
Yes.
Councillor Major? No. Councillor Keon?
No.
Councillor Goff?
No.
Councillor Davidson? Aye. Councillor Cotter?
Yes.
Councillor Turner?
Yes.
So the yeses are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, sorry, Councillor Donovan, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Let's change this paper.
Yeah, we need to update the paper. So the yeses are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and the noes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So that's carried. And then clause 2, recommendation 2. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against?
No.
That's also carried. Thank you. All right, now I'm hoping we might be able to move reasonably quickly through these next items. Okay, so LGFA, annual report and annual general meeting. Sam, you're happy to move, I'm happy to second. We'll take the report as read. Was there anything that you needed to highlight that's not in the report? Or that you wanted to highlight from the report?
Yeah, look, the only one thing I wanted to mention is that paragraph 3.17, 3.7.17 is a bit of a botched paragraph. It should read, the staff recommendation is to support the block of amendments. It says, the paragraph itself says we do, and then it says we don't.
So that's just a correction.
We do,
Yeah. All right, that's fine. Thank you.
the recommendation is right, our recommendations are right.
Yeah, that's fine. Were there any questions on this? All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. And then moving to item 14. Sam, you'll move. I'll second. Any questions? Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. I'll now move that we exclude the public for the reasons set out in the report. Pauline, you'll second. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. I'll move the public excluded minutes from the 23rd of September. Sam will second. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. And now Sam will take the chair for... Kia hora te marina, kia whakapapa ponamu te moana. Oh,
Yeah, we did.
we did move back into public. Okay. Kia hora te marina, kia whakapapa ponamu te moana. Hei hora hi mā tātou I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa, hui e, taiki e.